The north is cold and full of whispers.
The crypts of Winterfell smelled of stone and silence and the dead. Robert Baratheon descended the worn steps, his boots scraping against rock that had witnessed 300 years of stark burials. The torches cast dancing shadows across the stone faces of long-dead lords, their iron swords rusting across their laps, their stone direwolves crumbling at their feet. Ned Stark walked beside him, silent as always, his face carved from the same northern granite as his ancestors. "Gods, it's cold down here," Robert muttered, his breath fogging in the frigid air. "How do you people live like this? It's summer and I'm freezing my balls off. We're northerners, Your Grace. The cold doesn't bother us. Everything bothers northerners. That's why you're all so bloody dour." Robert's hand trailed along the wall, feeling the dampness seep through stone. "Where is she?" Ned's jaw tightened. "This way." They walked deeper, past Brandon Stark with his sword across his knees, past Rickard Stark whose stone eyes seemed to follow them. The crypt stretched endlessly into darkness, generation after generation of dead Starks watching from alcoves carved into living rock. Finally, Ned stopped before a statue, Lyanna Stark. Robert stood before her, his massive frame suddenly smaller. The statue was beautiful, young, fierce, her stone hair flowing wild, her face captured in that moment between girl and woman. The sculptor had given her a slight smile, as if she'd been laughing at some private joke when death took her. 15 years, Robert whispered. His hand reached out, fingers trembling as they traced the curve of her stone cheek. 15 years, and I still see her face every time I close my eyes. Ned said nothing. He'd learned long ago that Robert's grief was a storm, violent, unpredictable, and best weathered in silence. "You didn't see her at the end? You didn't see what that bastard Rhaegar did to her." Robert's voice cracked. "Promise me, Ned. Promise me you'll protect them." That's what she said, wasn't it? Her last words? Memory. Robert spat the word like poison. What good is memory? She's dead. The Dragon Prince killed her, and I killed him, but it wasn't enough. It's never enough. He leaned against the statue, his forehead pressed against cold stone. The King of the Seven Kingdoms, drunk and broken in a tomb, clinging to a dead girl's ghost, Ned watched his friend unravel and felt the weight of 16 years of lies pressing down on his chest like a boulder. Then Robert's head lifted, his eyes red-rimmed and wet, focused on something behind Ned. "Who's there?" Ned turned. A figure stood in the shadows at the edge of the torchlight, tall for his age, lean, dark-haired, gray eyes reflecting the flames like a wolf's. "Jon," Ned said quietly, "what are you doing down here?" Jon Snow stepped forward, his face flushed with embarrassment at being caught. "I'm sorry, Father. I didn't mean to intrude. He gestured helplessly at the statue beside Lyanna's. Brandon Stark, Ned's brother. "I visit sometimes." To pay respects, Robert's eyes narrowed, studying the boy. Jon stood still under that gaze, uncomfortable but refusing to look away. His bastard's training: never show weakness, never apologize for existing. "Your bastard?" Robert's voice was strange, hollow. "Yes, Your Grace." Jon's hands clenched at his sides, but he didn't retreat. "How old are you, boy?" "Nearly 16, 15. Robert stopped directly in front of him, so close Jon could smell the wine on his breath. "What's your mother's name?" "I don't know, Your Grace. My father never told me." "Ned," Robert didn't take his eyes off Jon. "You never told him?" "It wasn't necessary," Ned said carefully. "The boy knows he's a Snow. That's enough." "Is it?" Robert's hand shot out, gripping Jon's chin, turning his face toward the torchlight. Jon flinched but held still. "Look at him, Ned. Really look at him." Ned's heart hammered against his ribs. "Robert, let the boy go. The gray eyes, the long face, the dark hair." Robert's voice was almost wondering. "He looks more Stark than your true-born sons. More Stark than you, even." He released Jon, who stumbled back a step, one hand rubbing his jaw where Robert's grip had been. "He has her look," Robert whispered. Lyanna's look, that same solemn face, like the weight of the world sat on their shoulders. He turned to Ned. "Doesn't he? Tell me you see it." Ned saw it every day, saw Lyanna and Jon's quiet dignity, in his fierce loyalty, in the way he loved his siblings despite Catelyn's coldness, saw Rhaegar in his melancholy, in his thoughtfulness, in the way he read books when other boys trained with swords. "All Starks look alike," Ned said. "It's the blood of the first men, ancient and strong. Ancient and strong." Robert repeated. He looked at Jon again, then at Lyanna's statue, then back at Jon. Something was working behind his eyes, some thought taking shape through the fog of wine and grief. Go, boy, back to the feast. Tell them the king will return shortly. Jon glanced at Ned, who nodded. The boy fled, his footsteps echoing as he climbed the stairs, leaving the two men alone with the dead. Robert stood silent for a long moment. Then he laughed, a bitter, broken sound. I never had a son, Ned, not a real one. Joffrey's a vicious little shit who cringes when I raise my voice. But your bastard. He stood there like a man, didn't grovel, didn't beg, just took it. Jon's a good boy. He has honor. Honor. Robert's mouth twisted. You always did put too much stock in honor. But maybe, he trailed off, his eyes distant, maybe honor's worth something after all. He started toward the stairs, then paused, looking back at Lyanna one last time. She deserved better than me. Better than Rhaegar. Better than all of us. His voice was soft, almost tender. But maybe there's a way to make it right. Maybe there's a way to give her something, even now. Ned followed him up the stairs, dread coiling in his stomach like a serpent. Robert drunk was dangerous. Robert drunk and philosophical was catastrophic. The great hall of Winterfell blazed with light and sound. 300 people filled the space. Northern lords and ladies, southern knights and nobles, servants rushing between tables laden with food, boar and venison and honeyed duck, wine from the arbor and beer from the wall, fruits from Dorne and bread still steaming from the ovens. At the high table, Cersei Lannister sat like a queen surveying her conquered territory. Her golden hair gleamed in the firelight, her green eyes cold as winter ice. Beside her, Joffrey tormented a serving girl, pinching her arm until she yelped, laughing when she spilled wine down her dress. Jon stood against the wall near the kitchens, refilling cups and clearing plates like the other bastards and servants. He'd grown used to his place, necessary but invisible, part of the household but never quite belonging. He caught Robb's eye across the hall. His brother, half-brother though they'd never called each other that, raised his cup in a subtle salute. Jon smiled despite himself. Then the hall doors crashed open. Robert entered like a storm, Ned following behind. The king's face was flushed, his eyes bright with wine and something else. Some manic energy that made everyone in the hall go still. My lords, my ladies, Robert's voice boomed across the space. I have something to say. Cersei's eyes narrowed. Jon saw her hand grip the armrest of her chair, knuckles going white. Robert climbed the steps to the high table, nearly stumbling, catching himself on a chair. Ned moved to steady him, but Robert waved him off. I've been thinking. Dangerous thing for a king to do, I know. Laughter, nervous and uncertain, rippled through the hall. I've been thinking about family, about loyalty, about what makes a man worthy. He turned, his gaze sweeping the hall until it found Jon. You, Jon Snow. Come here. Now, boy. Your king commands it. Jon forced himself forward, weaving between tables, acutely aware of every whisper, every stare. He climbed the steps to the high table and stood before Robert, his heart hammering so hard he thought everyone must hear it. Robert studied him for a long moment. Then he turned to Ned. Your bastard served this feast with more dignity than princes twice his age. He stood before me in the crypts without fear. He has Stark blood and Stark honor. Robert's voice carried to every corner of the hall. It's a waste, keeping him in shadows. Your Grace, Ned began, but Robert cut him off. I'm not finished. He turned back to Jon. Kneel. Jon's legs gave out. He knelt, his head bowed, not understanding but knowing his life was about to change in ways he couldn't predict. I, Robert of House Baratheon, first of his name, King of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the first men, Lord of the Seven Kingdoms and Protector of the Realm, do hereby legitimize Jon Snow. Robert's voice was steady now, formal, carrying the weight of royal authority. From this day forward, you shall be Jon Stark, true-born son of House Stark, with all rights and privileges thereof. The hall erupted. Gasps, whispers, a few scattered cheers from northern lords who'd always liked the bastard boy. Jon's mind went blank with shock. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening. Furthermore, Robert continued, his voice cutting through the noise, I betroth Jon Stark to my daughter, Myrcella Baratheon. They shall be wed when she comes of age, uniting the houses of Stark and Baratheon in blood and bond. The noise died instantly. Absolute silence fell across the great hall. Jon looked up, his gray eyes wide with disbelief. At the high table, Cersei had gone white as snow, her face a mask of barely contained fury. Joffrey's mouth hung open in shock, and at the end of the table, a small girl with golden hair and green eyes stared at Jon with wide, curious eyes. Myrcella, 10 years old, a princess, his betrothed. "Stand, Jon Stark," Robert commanded. Jon stood on legs that felt like water. His whole body trembled. He wasn't a bastard anymore. He was a Stark. He was betrothed to a princess. He was about to become part of the most dangerous family in Westeros. Robert clapped him on the shoulder, nearly knocking him over. "You have Stark blood and Stark honor. That's more than I can say for some golden-haired shits at this table." His gaze flicked meaningfully toward Joffrey. The hall remained frozen. Then, slowly, Robb stood. He raised his cup, his face split in a genuine smile. "To Jon Stark, my brother." The northern lords rose as one, cups raised, voices joining in the toast. The southerners followed more slowly, some with smiles, others with barely concealed disgust. Jon stood at the center of it all, listening to his name, his new name, being shouted by 300 voices, and felt the weight of it settle onto his shoulders like a cloak of iron. Across the table, Cersei's eyes met his, and in those green depths, Jon saw his death being planned. The godswood was silent except for the whisper of wind through ancient branches. Catelyn Stark knelt before the heart tree, her hands folded in prayer, her face a mask of composure that cost her everything to maintain. The weirwood's face wept red sap like blood, its carved mouth frozen in an eternal scream. She'd been praying for an hour, praying for understanding, praying for the will not to strangle her husband in his sleep. Jon Snow, Jon Stark now, gods help them all, legitimized, betrothed to a princess, elevated above her own daughters. The injustice of it burned in her chest like swallowed coals. She heard footsteps on the path behind her, soft, measured, the tread of someone who walked carefully even when alone. Catelyn didn't turn, didn't acknowledge the presence. She knew who it was. Lady Stark. Cersei Lannister's voice was honey over steel. "I hope I'm not intruding on your prayers. The godswood is open to all." Catelyn rose, brushing dirt from her dress, finally turning to face the queen. "Though I'm surprised to find you here, your grace. I thought you worshipped the Seven." "I do, but the gods are gods, wherever you find them." Cersei moved closer, her green silk dress whispering against the grass. "And right now, I find myself in need of understanding from someone who might share my concerns." Catelyn's eyes narrowed. She wasn't a fool. Cersei Lannister didn't seek understanding. She sought weapons. What concerns would those be? Cersei stopped beside her, looking up at the weirwood's face. "Your husband's bastard, forgive me, your husband's legitimized son, has been betrothed to my daughter, a child of 10. Don't you find that troubling?" "My husband had no choice. The king commanded it." "Did he?" Cersei's head tilted, her golden hair catching the dappled sunlight. "Or did Lord Eddard plant the seed in Robert's drunken mind? A bastard elevated, a Stark position to marry into the royal family, gaining power and influence. It's quite clever, really. Ned would never, wouldn't he?" Cersei turned to face her fully. "Lady Stark, we're both mothers. Surely you see what this means. Your husband's bastard, a boy who's lived in the shadows his entire life, suddenly thrust into prominence, given a position he never earned, betrothed to a princess he's never met." Catelyn's hands clenched. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that we're both women watching men play their games with our children as pieces." Cersei stepped closer, her voice dropping to an intimate murmur. "My daughter is innocent, sweet, trusting, and now she's been promised to a boy who grew up knowing he had nothing, who suddenly has everything. Don't you wonder what kind of man that creates? Jon is honorable. Ned raised him well. Honorable." Cersei's laugh was soft, bitter. "Ned Stark is so honorable he kept his bastard close, raised him alongside his trueborn children, let him grow up watching what he could never have. And now, through Robert's drunken whim, he has it all. Do you truly believe he won't want more?" Catelyn wanted to argue, wanted to defend Jon, though every word would taste like ash in her mouth. But Cersei's poison was finding cracks in her armor, seeping through defenses weakened by 16 years of resentment. "What do you want from me?" "Everything. I want you to be honest with yourself." Cersei's hand touched her arm, gentle as a mother's caress. "You hate him, the bastard. You've hated him since Ned brought him home, haven't you? Every time you look at him, you see your husband's betrayal, his mother, whoever she was, laughing at you from across the years. Catelyn pulled her arm away. My feelings are my own, of course, but feelings have a way of revealing truth. Cersei's smile was sympathetic, understanding, perfectly calculated. If Jon were to prove himself unworthy, if he were to show his true nature before the wedding, Robert would have to reconsider. For Myrcella's sake, you want me to help you destroy Jon. I want to protect my daughter from a marriage that shouldn't exist. And I think deep in your heart, you want the same thing. Not for Myrcella, for your own daughters. Why should a bastard, legitimized or not, marry a princess while Sansa and Arya remain unbetrothed? The words hit like arrows, each one finding a mark Catelyn had tried to ignore. Sansa was 13, beautiful, graceful, everything a lady should be. Arya was difficult but spirited, a true Stark. Either would make a better match for royalty than a boy who'd been born a bastard. I won't conspire against my husband's son. I'm not asking you to conspire. I'm asking you to observe, to watch. And if Jon proves himself unworthy, to simply tell the truth. Cersei's eyes glittered. That's all. Just the truth. She left then, gliding away between the trees like a golden serpent. Catelyn stood alone in the godswood, her prayers forgotten, Cersei's poison working its way through her veins. The hunting party assembled in the courtyard at dawn. 20 men, northern and southern mixed, armed with bows and spears and the king's boisterous enthusiasm. Robert wore hunting leathers that strained across his massive belly, his beard braided for the occasion, his face flushed with excitement. A proper hunt, he bellowed, checking his horse's girth. None of your northern rabbits and squirrels. We're going for boar today, big bastards with tusks like swords. Jon checked his own horse's tack for the 3rd time, his fingers fumbling with buckles. He'd barely slept. Every time he'd closed his eyes, he'd seen Cersei's face across the feast table, her smile like a blade being drawn. Nervous? Theon Greyjoy appeared beside him, his handsome face twisted in a smirk. Can't say I blame you. One day you're mucking stables, the next you're betrothed to a princess. Must be quite the adjustment. I didn't ask for this. No, could have refused, could have told the king you knew your place. Theon's voice was casual, but his eyes were hard. But you didn't. You took it. Everything. The name, the betrothal, the position, left the rest of us wondering what it's like to be the chosen one. Jon turned to face him fully. Theon had been a hostage at Winterfell for 10 years, taken after his father's failed rebellion. They'd grown up together, trained together, existed in the same liminal space between family and outsider. But Jon had never seen this look on Theon's face before, this naked envy mixed with something darker. I didn't choose this. None of us choose anything. We just take what's offered and try not to choke on it. Theon mounted his horse in one fluid motion. Enjoy your hunt, Lord Stark. Try not to fall off your horse and embarrass your future bride. He rode away before Jon could respond. Robb appeared, leading his own mount. Don't listen to Theon. He's jealous. He's not wrong, though. I don't belong here. You're a Stark now. You belong anywhere a Stark belongs. Robb gripped his shoulder. Father legitimized you years ago in his heart. Robert just made it official. Or did Robert make me a target? Before Robb could answer, a scream cut through the courtyard. Jon spun. A horse was rearing, wild-eyed and panicked, its rider, one of the southern lords, barely hanging on. The animal's legs flailed, hooves striking the cobblestones with sparks. No, not random panic. Jon saw it in an instant, the blood on the horse's flank, the small cut barely visible beneath the saddle. Someone had hurt the horse. Deliberately, move. Jon ran forward as the rider lost his grip, falling. The horse's hooves came down where the man's head had been a heartbeat before. Jon grabbed the man's collar and dragged him clear. The horse bolted, crashing through the gates and into the courtyard beyond. The southern lord stared up at Jon, his face white with shock. You saved my life. Your horse was cut. Someone stabbed it under the saddle. Jon helped him to his feet. Small blade, enough to drive it mad when you mounted. Robert pushed through the crowd, his face thunderous. What happened here? An accident, your grace, the lord stammered. My horse went mad. This boy, Jon Stark, he pulled me clear. Accident. Robert's eyes swept the courtyard, landing on each face in turn. A horse going mad the day of the hunt. How convenient. Cersei appeared in the doorway to the keep, her face arranged in perfect concern. How terrible, thank the gods no one was hurt. Perhaps we should postpone the hunt. For safety, postpone nothing. Robert's voice was a growl. We hunt today, and someone better pray I don't find out this was more than an accident, because if I do, he left the threat hanging. The party rode out 20 minutes later, tension crackling through the group like lightning before a storm. Jon rode near the back, his mind racing. The cut on the horse had been precise, professional. Not an accident, not random. Someone had tried to create chaos. Maybe hurt someone, maybe kill someone, maybe kill him. He thought of Cersei's eyes across the feast table, thought of Theon's bitter envy, thought of all the people who'd been watching when Robert elevated a bastard above true-born lords. How many of them wanted him dead? The wolfswood was ancient and dark, the trees so thick that noon felt like twilight. The hunting party had split into smaller groups, following different tracks. Jon rode with Robb, Theon, and 3 northern men-at-arms. The trail of a massive boar led deeper into the forest, the tracks clear in the soft earth. "Big bastard," one of the men-at-arms muttered. "Maybe 400 pounds. Tusks like swords." Theon notched an arrow, his bow held ready. "I'll take the first shot, pin it down before it can charge." "You'll miss and make it angry," Robb said. "Let Jon take the shot. He's the better archer." Theon's face darkened. "Is he now?" "Since always. You know it's true?" Jon felt the weight of their eyes. This was a test. Everything now was a test. Theon should take the shot. It's his right. He saw the trail first. Modest. Theon's smile was sharp. "How very noble of you, Lord Stark. But if Robb says you're better, let's see it, unless you're afraid of failing in front of your brother." The challenge hung in the air. Jon took the bow from his back, selected an arrow, and waited. The boar burst from the undergrowth without warning. Massive, black, its tusks yellow with age. It charged directly at the horses. Jon drew and released in one smooth motion. The arrow took the boar in the throat. It stumbled, crashed, slid to a halt at the horse's feet. Clean kill. Perfect shot. Theon stared at the dead boar, then at Jon, his face unreadable. "Lucky," he said finally. "Skill," Robb corrected. "Accept it, Greyjoy. Jon's the better shot." Something flickered across Theon's face, humiliation, rage, something else Jon couldn't identify. Then it was gone, replaced by his usual smirk. "Well, the princess is getting quite the prize, isn't she? A true Stark lord. Wonder if you'll be as good at other things, husbandly duties and such," Theon, Robb warned. "What? I'm just saying, bedding a princess is different than bedding tavern girls. She'll have expectations, standards," his grin widened. "Or maybe you already know all about that. Maybe that's why Robert picked you, saw something in you that—" Jon's fist caught him in the mouth. Theon went down hard, blood blooming on his lip. He touched it, stared at the red on his fingers, then started laughing. "There it is, the Stark temper. I was wondering when we'd see it." Jon stood over him, breathing hard, his knuckles throbbing. "Insult me all you want, but don't talk about her like that." "Her?" Theon wiped blood from his chin. "You haven't even met the girl. She's 10 years old, a child, and you're already defending her honor? Gods, you really are a Stark. All that northern nobility rotting your brain. Get up, so you can hit me again?" "I don't think so." Theon stayed on the ground, his eyes calculating. "But I'll remember this. The day Jon Stark hit me for speaking truth. I'm sure your father will be interested to hear about it." Robb moved between them. "Enough. Both of you. Theon, you were out of line. Jon, you shouldn't have hit him. It's done. We have a boar to bring back." But it wasn't done. Jon could see it in Theon's eyes, in the way he touched his bleeding lip, in the smile that didn't reach his eyes. He'd made an enemy. How many more would he make before this was over? They rode back to Winterfell in silence, the dead boar slung between 2 horses. Jon's knuckles ached. His head ached worse. He thought about the cut horse, about Cersei's poison words to Catelyn, about Theon's sudden hatred, about all the ways this could go wrong. And for the first time since Robert's drunken decree, Jon allowed himself to wonder, what if Cersei was right? What if he was reaching too high, grasping for something that would destroy him? What if he was making the biggest mistake of his life? The keep rose in the distance, gray stone against gray sky. Somewhere in those walls, a princess waited, a girl he'd never met, never spoken to, who'd been promised to him by a drunk king in a moment of grief and madness. Jon urged his horse forward. Whatever came next, he'd face it. He was a Stark now, even if he didn't know what that meant. The royal caravan stretched for miles along the King's Road like a golden serpent crawling south. Jon rode near the front, Ghost padding beside his horse. The direwolf had grown massive in the weeks since they'd found the pups, white as snow and silent as death. Robert had insisted Jon ride with him, much to Cersei's barely concealed fury and Joffrey's constant sulking. "A squire rides with his lord," Robert had declared on the morning they departed Winterfell. "Jon's my squire now. He'll learn what it means to serve a king." That had been 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks of dust and sweat and Robert's endless stories. 3 weeks of watching the north fall away behind them, replaced by the rolling hills and rivers of the Riverlands. 3 weeks of feeling Cersei's eyes on his back like daggers waiting to strike. "Pay attention, boy," Robert's voice jolted Jon from his thoughts. "I'm teaching you something important here." Jon straightened in his saddle. "Yes, Your Grace. I was telling you about the trident, the day I killed Rhaegar Targaryen." Robert's eyes gleamed with the memory. Warhammer against sword, dragon against stag, the greatest fight of my life. Jon had heard this story a dozen times already. Robert told it constantly, each version growing slightly more elaborate. But Jon listened anyway because that's what squires did. He had Valyrian steel, rubies on his breastplate, each one worth a kingdom. Thought he was so pretty, so perfect. The Dragon Prince. Robert spat over the side of his horse. "But I put my hammer through all those rubies. Sent them flying into the river. They're still there, you know. Fishermen find them sometimes. Dragon rubies. At the bottom of the trident. You must have been very brave, Your Grace." "Brave?" I was angry. Angry and in love and stupid. Robert's expression darkened. "He took her from me. Lyanna, your aunt. The most beautiful woman in Westeros. And that bastard stole her, raped her, killed her, giving birth to his whelp." Every time Robert mentioned Lyanna, Jon felt something twist in his chest. Grief for the aunt he'd never known. Guilt for reasons he couldn't name. "She would have been a queen," Robert continued. "My queen. We'd have had strong sons, brave daughters. But Rhaegar destroyed all that. Destroyed her. Destroyed everything." He took a long pull from his wineskin. It was barely midday and he was already drinking. Jon had learned that Robert drank to drown memories, but they always surfaced again, angrier than before. "Your father never talks about her. Won't say her name if he can help it." Robert's gaze sharpened, focusing on Jon with uncomfortable intensity. "But you visit her tomb. I saw you that night. What do you do down there?" "I pray, Your Grace, for her soul, for all the Starks who've gone before." "Do you remember her at all? You were just a babe when she died." "No, Your Grace. I never knew her. But you look like her. The dark hair, the gray eyes, the serious face. More than Ned's true-born children, you have her look." Robert stared at him so long that Jon's horse started to drift sideways. "It's like she's watching me through your eyes sometimes. Judging me. I'm sorry, Your Grace. I don't mean to." "Stop apologizing." Robert's voice was sharp. "A lord doesn't apologize for existing, remember that. You're Jon Stark now. Act like it." They rode in silence for a while, then Robert spoke again, his tone lighter. "You'll meet her tonight. My daughter, Myrcella, at the evening camp." Jon's stomach dropped. "Your Grace, I don't think. You're betrothed. You should meet. Get to know each other. She's a sweet girl. Nothing like her brother." Robert's face twisted with disgust at the mention of Joffrey. "That little shit is all Lannister. But Myrcella, she has her mother's beauty and her grandmother's kindness. You could do worse." "I could do better," Jon thought, but didn't say. A princess was far above what a bastard, even a legitimized bastard, deserved. He barely processed the betrothal before they'd left Winterfell. The idea of actually meeting her, speaking to her, terrified him more than any sword fight. "Whatever you like. Be yourself. She's 10 years old, not some scheming courtier." Robert grinned. "Though give her a few years. All women become schemers eventually. It's in their blood." Behind them, Jon heard Joffrey's whining voice, carrying from the wheelhouse where he rode with his mother and siblings. The prince never rode if he could help it, claiming the sun hurt his delicate skin and the dust ruined his clothes. "Your Grace," Jon ventured, "Prince Joffrey seems displeased with the betrothal. Boy's never done a hard day's work in his life. Never trained properly, never hunted, never got his hands dirty. Cersei's coddled him until he's soft as butter." He looked at Jon appraisingly. "You're different. You've worked. You've trained. You know what it means to earn respect instead of demanding it." "I'm a bastard, Your Grace. I had no choice. were a bastard. Now you're a Stark, and that means something. More than being a Lannister in my book." Robert's hand clapped Jon's shoulder hard enough to make him wince. "That's why I did this, you know. The legitimization, the betrothal. I saw you standing in those crypts and I thought, here's a boy who actually deserves something good. A boy who reminds me of your aunt, who has Stark honor running through his veins. Why shouldn't he marry a princess? Why shouldn't he have what he's worth?" Robert's generosity was real, but it was also dangerous. Every gift came with a price, and Jon was starting to understand how steep that price might be. "I'll try to be worthy of it, Your Grace." "You already are, boy. You already are." The evening camp sprawled across a meadow beside a tributary of the Trident. Tents rose like colorful mushrooms, cook fires sending smoke into the darkening sky. Jon helped Robert with his armor, a squire's duty, removing the heavy plates piece by piece and cleaning them with oil and cloth. "You're getting better at this," Robert observed, watching Jon work. "First week you nearly dropped my breastplate. Would have crushed your foot if it had landed. I'm learning, Your Grace. A man should know how to care for his equipment. Keeps you alive when the fighting starts." Robert stretched, his joints popping. "Now go wash. You smell like horse and sweat. Can't meet a princess smelling like that." Jon's heart hammered. Tonight, I thought, go introduce yourself. Try not to terrify her. Jon wanted to refuse, to claim exhaustion or illness or anything that would delay this meeting. But Robert was watching him with those sharp blue eyes, and Jon knew this was another test. "Yes, Your Grace." He washed in the river, scrubbing away 3 weeks of road grime, then changed into the one fine tunic he owned, dark gray with the white wolf of House Stark embroidered on the chest. Robb had given it to him before they'd left Winterfell, a gift to mark Jon's new status. "You're a Stark," Robb had said, pressing the tunic into Jon's hands. "Wear it proudly." Now Jon pulled it on and tried to calm his breathing. He was just meeting a girl, a child, his betrothed, the Princess of the Seven Kingdoms. Nothing to be terrified about. Ghost followed him through the camp, drawing stares from soldiers and servants. The dire wolf was already the size of a pony, with eyes like red embers. Jon rested his hand on Ghost's head, drawing comfort from the solid warmth. The main pavilion was the largest tent, cloth of gold walls glowing with lamplight. Jon heard female voices inside, laughing, talking, the sound of women at ease. He stood outside for a full minute, unable to make himself enter. Then a voice spoke behind him. "Are you going in or just planning to stand there all night?" Jon spun. A dwarf stood there, barely 4 feet tall, with mismatched eyes, one green, one black, and a knowing smile. "Lord Tyrion," Jon said, recognizing the Queen's brother from the feast at Winterfell. "Just Tyrion, no need for formality between us." The dwarf moved closer, studying Jon with disconcerting intensity. "You're terrified. I can see it. The great Jon Stark, slayer of boars and savior of southern lords, afraid of a 10-year-old girl." "I'm not afraid. Liar. But that's all right. Fear is sensible. My niece is sweet, but she's still a Lannister. We're a dangerous family." Tyrion's smile widened. "Though I suppose you've already figured that out. My sister's been plotting your demise since the moment Robert announced the betrothal. I'd be careful if I were you." "Is that a warning or a threat?" "A warning. I like you, Jon Stark, rather. You're genuine, honest, hopelessly naive, but honest nonetheless. The court will eat you alive if you're not careful." Tyrion gestured to the pavilion. "But you can survive it. You have something the rest of them don't." "What's that?" "You don't want anything. Everyone else is grasping for power, for position, for advancement. But you didn't ask for legitimization, didn't ask for a princess. You're just trying to do the right thing." Tyrion's expression turned thoughtful. "That makes you either a fool or the most dangerous man in Westeros. I haven't decided which yet. I'm neither. I'm just trying to survive. I understand that better than anyone." Tyrion patted his arm. "Go meet her. Be yourself. She'll like you better than any lord who puts on false courtesy. And Jon, if you need an ally at court, remember that I'm good at keeping secrets. Might be useful to have a Lannister who doesn't want you dead." He walked away, leaving Jon alone with the glowing pavilion and his racing heart. Jon took a breath, then another. Then he pushed aside the tent flap and entered. The pavilion was filled with women, ladies in fine dresses, servants pouring wine, all of them turning to stare at the dark-haired boy who just walked into their midst. At the center, Sitting on cushions around a low table were three figures. Cersei Lannister, beautiful and cold, her green eyes narrowing as she saw him. Sansa Stark, his sister, half-sister, looking mortified that her bastard brother had invaded this feminine space. And between them, a small girl with golden hair and green eyes, wearing a dress of pale blue silk. Myrcella. She looked up at Jon, and her face lit with curiosity rather than disgust or fear. "Are you Jon?" Her voice was high and clear, with none of the contempt Jon had expected. "Mother said you were coming to meet me." Jon knelt as he'd seen knights do before ladies. "Yes, my lady. I'm Jon Stark. Your betrothed." The word felt strange in his mouth. Foreign. Myrcella smiled, a genuine, delighted smile that transformed her face from pretty to beautiful. "You have a wolf. Is that Ghost? Father told me about him. Can I pet him?" Jon glanced at Cersei, expecting prohibition. But the queen sat silent, watching with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Yes, my lady, if you're gentle." He's still learning not to bite. Myrcella slid off her cushion and approached Ghost carefully, extending one small hand. The direwolf sniffed her fingers, then, to Jon's shock, lowered his massive head and let her scratch behind his ears. "He's beautiful," Myrcella breathed. "I've never seen anything like him. He's from the north. All the Stark children have direwolves now. Will I get one when we're married?" The question was so innocent, so full of hope, that Jon felt something crack in his chest. She wasn't disgusted by his bastard origins. She was just a child, delighted by a wolf and curious about the strange boy she'd been promised to. "If you like, though they're hard to care for. Ghost eats more than I do. Then we'll feed him together, you and me. That's what married people do, isn't it? They do things together?" "I suppose so, my lady. Don't call me my lady. It sounds so formal. Call me Myrcella." She looked up at him with those green eyes. Lannister eyes. Cersei's eyes, but without the coldness. "Are you really a Stark now? Mother says you were a Snow before, but King Robert changed it." Jon's throat tightened. "Yes, I was born Jon Snow. The king legitimized me. Why?" The simple question held no judgment, just curiosity. Jon found himself answering honestly. "I don't know. He said I reminded him of someone he lost." "That's sad." Myrcella's hand left Ghost, reaching out to touch Jon's arm. "But I'm glad he did. I was afraid I'd have to marry someone mean. Joffrey says most lords are mean, but you seem kind. You saved that man when his horse went mad. Sansa told me about it." Jon glanced at Sansa, who looked away quickly, her cheeks flushed. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," Myrcella said firmly. "Not anyone. Joffrey wouldn't have. He would have laughed." She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I don't think my brother is very nice, but don't tell Mother I said that." Despite everything, the fear, the uncertainty, the weight of expectations, Jon smiled. "Your secret is safe with me. Will you walk with me tomorrow, when we stop for midday rest? I'd like to learn about the North. Father says you know all about it." "I'd be honored, my lady, Myrcella." "It's settled then." She returned to her cushions, looking pleased with herself. "This isn't as scary as I thought it would be. Mother said you'd be rough and northern and uncomfortable. But you're just nice." Cersei's smile tightened fractionally. "Myrcella, dear, perhaps you should let Lord Stark return to his duties. I'm sure he's tired from the road." "Must he go already?" Myrcella's disappointment was genuine. "We only just met. Months of travel yet." Cersei's eyes found Jon's. "Won't there, Lord Stark?" The threat beneath the courtesy was unmistakable. Jon recognized it now. The velvet-covered blade, the poisoned smile. Cersei was warning him. This meeting had gone too well. Myrcella liked him. That made him more dangerous, not less. "Yes, Your Grace. Thank you for allowing me to meet the princess." He bowed, too low probably, he was still learning the proper depths of bows, and backed toward the exit. "Jon," Myrcella called after him. "Tomorrow, don't forget." "I won't." Outside, the cool air hit him like a blessing. Jon leaned against a wagon, his legs weak, his heart pounding. She'd liked him. The princess had actually liked him, which meant, Jon realized with growing dread, that Cersei would try even harder to kill him. Ghost pressed against his leg, warm and solid and real. Jon scratched the direwolf's ears and looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere ahead, King's Landing waited, the court, the vipers Tyrion had warned him about. A life he'd never imagined and wasn't sure he wanted. But behind him, in that glowing pavilion, was a girl with golden hair who'd smiled at him like he mattered. Jon pushed off the wagon and headed back to Robert's tent. Tomorrow, he'd walk with a princess. Tonight, he'd try to survive until morning, one day at a time. That was all anyone could do. King's Landing smelled of shit and seawater and 500,000 people living too close together. Jon stood at the gates, watching the city sprawl before him like a festering wound. After 2 months on the King's Road, the sight of the capital made his stomach turn. Winterfell had been clean, cold, and harsh, but clean. This place looked like it was rotting from within. Impressive, isn't it? Robert's voice boomed beside him. 500,000 souls, all packed into one stinking city, beautiful and terrible and utterly corrupt. He grinned. You'll hate it. Jon already did. The procession wound through the streets, crowds pressing in on all sides. Small folks shouted and cheered, throwing flowers at the royal carriage. Jon rode beside Robert, Ghost padding alongside his horse, and felt 1,000 eyes watching him. "Who's the dark-haired lad?" someone shouted. "That's Jon Stark, the princess's betrothed, a bastard marrying royalty. What's the world coming to?" Jon kept his face neutral, his hands steady on the reins, but inside he wanted to turn his horse around and ride back north, back to where he understood the rules, back to where being a bastard had been simple, if painful. The Red Keep rose above them, 7 massive drum towers crowned with iron ramparts. It looked like something built to withstand siege, not house a court. Menacing rather than beautiful. "Home," Robert said, the word dripping with disgust. "I hate this place. Give me Storm's End any day." At least it was honest. Built for war, not for politics. They passed through the gates into a courtyard filled with servants and courtiers, all bowing and scraping as the king dismounted. Jon slid from his horse, his legs aching from weeks of riding, and found himself immediately surrounded. Lord Stark, a fat man in maester's robes, approached, his chain of many metals clinking. "I am Grand Maester Pycelle, advisor to His Grace. Welcome to King's Landing." "Thank you, Grand Maester. Your quarters have been prepared in the royal apartments. Most unusual for a—" Pycelle paused delicately. "Ward of the king. But His Grace insisted you be housed near the family." Ward, the word was chosen carefully. Not family, not prince. Ward, Jon heard the subtle dismissal in it. That's very generous. Indeed, His Grace is nothing if not generous. Pycelle's watery eyes studied him. "I knew your father, of course, Lord Eddard, a most honorable man. I trust you carry his virtues?" "I try, Grand Maester. Trying is admirable. Succeeding is essential. The court can be challenging for those unused to its ways." Pycelle smiled, showing yellow teeth. "I hope you'll call upon me if you need guidance. I've served the realm for many years." The offer sounded helpful, but something in Pycelle's expression made Jon's skin crawl. A smugness, a certainty that Jon would fail and that Pycelle would enjoy watching it happen. "Thank you, I'll remember that." Pycelle waddled away, leaving Jon alone in the courtyard. Around him, servants unloaded wagons and courtiers whispered behind jeweled hands. Jon heard fragments of conversation. Nothing but Ned Stark's bastard. The queen must be furious. Give him a month before he's sent back north in disgrace. Jon's hands clenched. He wanted to shout at them, to demand they say these things to his face. But that's what they wanted. They wanted him to lose his temper, to prove he was just a bastard with a bastard's rage. "Don't listen to them," a voice spoke from behind. Jon turned to find a thin man with a pointed beard and eyes like gray-green coins. He wore expensive silk and carried himself with a serpent's grace. Court gossip is like the tide. It rises and falls and ultimately means nothing. And you are Petyr Baelish, master of coin, though you may call me Littlefinger, everyone else does. The man bowed with exaggerated courtesy. "I knew your mother." "My mother?" "Catelyn Tully. She was Catelyn Stark when I knew her, of course, at Riverrun. We grew up together." Littlefinger's smile was knowing. "I assume she told you about me." "She's not my mother. She's my father's wife." "Ah, of course. How careless of me." Littlefinger's smile didn't waver. "Your actual mother, then. What was her name? Willa? Or was it Ashara Dane? The rumors vary." "Yeah." Jon's jaw clenched. "I don't know who my mother was. How unfortunate. Everyone should know where they come from. It helps them understand where they're going. Littlefinger stepped closer, his voice dropping. But perhaps it's better not to know. Some truths are better left buried, don't you think? What are you suggesting? Nothing. Everything. I'm simply observing that you're in a precarious position, Jon Stark. A bastard made legitimate by royal decree, betrothed to a princess, given privileges that make powerful men nervous. Littlefinger's eyes glittered. People will wonder what you did to earn such favor, what secrets you hold, what leverage you might possess. Everyone has secrets, and those who claim otherwise are the most dangerous of all. Littlefinger straightened. I'll be watching your progress with great interest, Lord Stark. If you need anything, gold, information, assistance, my door is always open, for a price, of course. He glided away, leaving Jon with the uncomfortable feeling that he'd just been evaluated and found useful in ways he didn't understand. That one's poison, another voice. This one, familiar. Tyrion Lannister approached, a cup of wine already in his hand despite the early hour. Littlefinger's brilliant, charming, and utterly without conscience. Never trust a word he says. You're related to the Queen, why should I trust you? You shouldn't, but at least I'm honest about being dishonest. Tyrion took a long drink. Welcome to King's Landing, Jon. The city of lies where everyone smiles while sharpening their knives. You'll fit right in. I don't want to fit in. Good. The moment you want to fit in is the moment they've won. Tyrion studied him. You met my niece on the road. Myrcella told me about it. Said you were kind to her. She's a sweet girl. She is. Too sweet for this place, too innocent. Tyrion's expression darkened. My sister will use that against you. Myrcella's affection makes you dangerous. She'll try to poison it. Turn the girl against you, or make you do something that destroys her trust. How do I stop her? You can't. Cersei's been playing this game since before you were born. She's ruthless, patient, and she never forgets a slight. Tyrion refilled his cup from a passing servant's pitcher. But you have advantages. You're honest, painfully so. You saved Robert's life on that hunt. And most importantly, you don't want power. That makes you unpredictable. I just want to survive. The fact that you're still breathing means you're better at this than you think. Tyrion raised his cup. Come, let me show you to your chambers, and for God's sake, don't drink anything that doesn't come from sealed bottles. Poison is the weapon of choice here. Jon's chambers were in the Maiden Vault, an ancient tower where Targaryen princesses had once been kept. The rooms were luxurious beyond anything Jon had ever experienced. Silk sheets, carved furniture, tapestries on the walls depicting dragons and battles. It felt like a gilded cage. Not bad for a bastard, eh? Tyrion surveyed the space with approval. Though I notice they've put you far from the other royal apartments, close enough to be monitored, far enough to keep you isolated. Everyone, Varys has his little birds, street children who spy for him. Pycelle reports to my father. Littlefinger watches everyone. And my sister has her own network of informants. Tyrion settled into a chair. You'll need to be careful what you say, even in your own rooms. Every word is calculated, every gesture planned, every smile rehearsed. Tyrion's face was serious for once. You're from the north. You were raised on honor and direct speech. That will get you killed here. You need to learn the game. I don't want to play games. Then you've already lost. The game plays itself, with or without your consent. Tyrion stood. Listen to me, Jon. I like you. You remind me of someone I used to be, before the cynicism set in. So I'm going to give you advice, free of charge. First, trust no one completely. Not me, not Barristan, not even my niece. Second, always have an escape route. Know where the exits are, who guards them, how to reach them. Third, keep your secrets close. Whatever you're hiding, and everyone's hiding something, guard it with your life. You're hiding everything. Your real feelings about this betrothal, your fear of failure, your bastard's resentment of the highborn, your love for the North that you're trying to suppress. He moved to the door. The question is, will you learn to use those secrets as weapons? Or will someone else use them against you first? He left, closing the door with a soft click. Jon stood alone in his golden cage and tried to breathe. That evening, Robert summoned him to the throne room. The Iron Throne loomed at the far end of an echoing hall, a twisted mass of swords forged by dragonfire. Robert sat on it uncomfortably, his bulk barely contained by the iron armrests. Jon Stark, his voice boomed through the space. Approach. Jon walked the length of the hall, acutely aware of the courtiers lining the walls. They watched him with predatory interest, evaluating, judging, already deciding his worth. He knelt before the throne. "Stand up," Robert commanded. "I didn't bring you here to grovel." From this close, the throne looked even more menacing. Blades sticking out at odd angles, some rusted with age, some still sharp enough to cut. "You'll be presented to the court officially tomorrow," Robert said. "Titles announced, betrothal confirmed, the whole bloody ceremony. But I wanted you to see this first." He gestured at the throne. "This is what you're marrying into. This monstrosity. This cursed chair made from 1,000 swords of defeated enemies. It's impressive, Your Grace. It's ugly and uncomfortable, and it cuts you if you sit wrong, like the realm itself is trying to kill you." Robert shifted, wincing. Aegon the Conqueror built this to remind kings that ruling shouldn't be easy, that power is painful, that every decision costs blood. Jon didn't know what to say to that. "Tomorrow they'll all be watching you," Robert continued, "looking for weakness, planning how to use you or destroy you. Some will try to befriend you, others will try to corrupt you, and my wife," his face darkened, "my wife will try to kill you. Not personally, she's too clever for that. But she'll arrange accidents, poisonings, falls from windows. She's very creative. Your Grace, if you know she's dangerous, what would you have me do? Imprison my own queen? Exile her?" Robert laughed bitterly. "I'm trapped, boy, trapped by my own decisions, by children who aren't really mine, by a marriage I never wanted but needed for power, by this fucking throne that I won but never deserved." He stood abruptly, descending the steps until he stood face to face with Jon. "You remind me of what I should have been, honorable, brave, uncorrupted by power. That's why I legitimized you, why I betrothed you to Myrcella. Because maybe, just maybe, you can be what I failed to become. Your Grace, you're not ready, I know, but you will be. Barristan will train you, I'll teach you what I can, and you'll learn to survive this nest of vipers." Robert gripped his shoulder. "You saved my life on that hunt. Now I'm trying to save yours, by giving you armor, a name, a position, tools to fight with. What if I fail? Like everyone else who's tried to be good in this city." Robert's smile was sad. "But I don't think you will. You've got your father's stubbornness, your aunt's fire, and something else, something I've only seen in a few men, the ability to inspire loyalty without demanding it." He released Jon and returned to the throne, settling onto it with a grimace. "Go, rest. Tomorrow you enter the game whether you want to or not. And Jon," Robert's eyes were serious, "watch your back, always. Trust Ghost before you trust anyone else. Animals don't lie." Outside, the corridor was empty except for one figure leaning against a pillar, Varys, the spider, master of whisperers. He was nothing like Jon had imagined. Soft, perfumed, his hands tucked into voluminous sleeves. His face was ageless, his smile enigmatic. "Lord Stark, a pleasure to finally make your acquaintance. Lord Varys, just Varys, please. I'm a humble servant of the realm." The spider pushed off the pillar and moved closer, his slippers silent on stone. "You performed admirably just now. Respectful but not servile. Honest but not foolish." His Grace was pleased. "You were listening. I listened to everything. It's my job." Varys's smile widened. "You should know that the Queen met with 3 men today. A sellsword captain, an alchemist, and a servant with connections to the kitchens. She paid them well." Jon's blood ran cold. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I serve the realm, and the realm needs you alive." Varys's expression turned serious. "You're an unknown variable, Jon Stark. You don't fit into the usual patterns. That makes you either very dangerous or very valuable. I haven't decided which yet. What do you want from me? But I believe in collecting allies, and I think you'll need one soon." Varys began walking away, his voice floating back. "The sellsword will try to kill you within the week. The alchemist is preparing poison, and the kitchen servant has been told to put ground glass in your wine. I trust you'll take appropriate precautions." He disappeared around a corner, leaving Jon alone in the corridor. Jon pressed his back against the wall, his heart hammering. 3 assassins. Already. And he'd been in King's Landing less than a day. Ghost materialized from the shadows, pressing against his leg. Jon buried his fingers in white fur and tried to steady his breathing. This was his life now. Assassins and spies, plots and counterplots, a game he didn't know how to play with stakes he couldn't afford to lose. Tomorrow, he'd be presented to the court. Tonight, he just had to survive until morning. Jon made his way back to his chambers, checking every shadow, trusting no one. Welcome to King's Landing. Welcome to hell. The training yard of the Red Keep rang with the clash of steel on steel. Jon circled Sir Meryn Trant, his practice sword held in a guard position Roderick Cassel had taught him years ago. Sweat ran down his back despite the morning chill. Around the yard, a crowd had gathered, knights, squires, servants, all watching the northern bastards spar with a king's guard. Trant was lazy. Jon had figured that out in the first 30 seconds. The knight's stance was sloppy, his footwork adequate but uninspired. He relied on strength and armor rather than skill. Jon feinted left, then struck right. His wooden blade cracked against Trant's ribs hard enough to make the knight grunt. "Lucky hit," Trant growled, circling faster now. "Let's see you do that again." 3 more times, each strike finding gaps in Trant's defense. The 4th time, Jon hooked Trant's leg with his foot, a move Robb had taught him, and sent the knight sprawling. The crowd murmured, a few laughed. Trant's face went purple with rage as he climbed to his feet. "You fight dirty." Trant ignored it, brushing past him toward the armory. "Enough." Sir Barristan Selmy's voice cut through the yard like a blade. The Lord Commander of the Kingsguard stood at the edge of the practice ring, his white cloak spotless, his face carved from granite. "Ser Meryn, you're dismissed." Jon's stomach dropped. He'd embarrassed a Kingsguard. In public, that was probably punishable by flogging or worse. He followed Barristan to the center of the yard. The old knight picked up 2 practice swords, tossing one to Jon. "Show me what you know." Jon settled into his stance. Barristan didn't move, just stood there watching with those sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. Then he attacked. The first strike came so fast, Jon barely blocked it. The second nearly took his head off. The third, 4th, 5th, a blinding combination that drove Jon backward across the yard until his back hit the wall. Barristan's blade stopped an inch from Jon's throat. "Dead," the old knight said calmly. 6 moves. You lasted longer than I expected." Jon's arms shook from the impact of the blocks. Barristan hadn't even broken a sweat. Again, Barristan commanded. They went again, and again, and again. Each time, Barristan dismantled Jon's defense with brutal efficiency. Each time, Jon lasted a few seconds longer. By the 10th bout, Jon's tunic was soaked through, and his muscles screamed. But he was learning, watching how Barristan moved, how he shifted his weight, how he created openings that seemed to appear from nowhere. "Better," Barristan said after the 15th round. "You're teachable. That's more than I can say for most." He lowered his blade. "You fight like a northerner. Heavy strikes, power over speed. It's effective against untrained opponents. Against a knight, it'll get you killed. Ser Meryn is a knight. I beat him. He serves because of his family's gold, not his skill." Barristan gestured to the crowd that was still watching. "Most of these knights are the same. They learn to joust, to look pretty in armor, to follow the forms. But they've never fought for their lives. You have. I can see it in how you move. You fight like survival matters. It does matter. Remember that." Barristan moved to a weapons rack, selecting 2 different practice swords, longer, lighter. "Your father was Ned Stark, yes? He taught you the northern style, direct, honest, brutal. It's a good foundation. But here you'll need more. You'll face men trained in the southern style, faster, more technical, more varied. You'll need to adapt." It felt wrong in Jon's hand, too balanced, too quick. "I'll teach you what I know," Barristan continued. "But understand, this isn't about making you the best swordsman in the 7 kingdoms. It's about keeping you alive long enough to become the man you're meant to be. The court is more dangerous than any battlefield, and the knife in the dark is more deadly than the sword in the light. Can you accept that?" 3 assassins already hunting him. "Yes, Ser Barristan." "Good. Then we start now, and we train every morning until you can hold your own against any knight in this city." Barristan settled into a new stance, blade held differently than before. "Defend yourself." 2 hours later, Jon could barely lift his arms. Barristan had worked him through drill after drill. Footwork, blade angles, defensive patterns, offensive combinations. The old knight was relentless, correcting every mistake, pushing Jon past exhaustion into a state where muscle memory took over and thought became reaction. "Enough for today," Barristan finally said. "You'll be useless if you're too sore to move tomorrow." Jon collapsed onto a bench, gulping water from a pitcher. Around him, the training yard had mostly cleared. A few knights still sparred, but the crowd had dispersed once the entertainment was over. "You did well," Barristan said, settling beside him. "You have natural talent, raw but present. With proper training, you could be formidable. But you don't have years. You have weeks, maybe months before someone tests you in earnest." Barristan's expression was grave. "You embarrassed, Sir Meryn. He serves the Queen. She'll use that. Arrange a duel, perhaps, or a trial by combat where Meryn is her champion. You need to be ready. You don't need to be as good as me. You need to be good enough to survive." Barristan stood, stretching muscles that should have been stiff with age but moved like a younger man's. "Tomorrow, same time. And Jon, watch yourself outside this yard. The sword isn't the only weapon here. Words, poison, reputation, they all kill just as surely. Trust no one completely." Jon sat alone, muscles burning, mind racing. Everyone kept telling him to trust no one. But how could he survive in a place where every hand might hold a knife? That was quite the show. Jon looked up. Sandor Clegane stood there, his burned face twisted in what might have been a smile or a sneer. It was hard to tell with the scar tissue. The Hound, Joffrey's sworn shield, one of the most dangerous men in the Seven Kingdoms. "Sir Sandor. Not sir. Never sir. I'm no fucking knight." The Hound moved closer, his massive frame blocking the sun. "You made Meryn look like a fool. He won't forget that. I was just training. You were making a statement, showing the court that the northern bastard has teeth." The Hound's eyes narrowed. "Good. This place needs more honesty. Too many pretty words hiding ugly truths." Jon didn't know what to say to that. The Hound was Joffrey's creature, loyal to the Lannisters. Why was he talking to Jon like an ally? "You fight like you mean it," the Hound continued. "No dancing, no showing off. Just violence with purpose. I respect that." He picked up a practice sword, testing its weight. "Barristan will teach you how to fight knights. I'll teach you how to fight killers. There's a difference. Why would you help me?" "Because I hate pretty boys who think armor makes them warriors. Because you don't put on airs. And because—" the Hound paused, his scarred face unreadable. "Because I saw what you did on the hunt, saving Robert from that boar. You didn't hesitate, didn't think about glory or reward. Just acted. That's rare." He tossed the practice sword to Jon, who caught it clumsily with his exhausted arms. "Tomorrow night, after Barristan's done with you, meet me in the lower armory. I'll show you the tricks they don't teach in proper knight training, the dirty moves that keep you breathing." The Hound's grin was savage. "And if you tell anyone I'm helping you, I'll deny it and call you a liar. Understood?" "Understood." The Hound walked away, leaving Jon with more questions than answers. That afternoon, Jon was summoned to the Great Hall for the formal presentation to court. He wore the finest clothes he'd ever owned, black leather and gray silk, the white wolf of Stark embroidered on his chest in silver thread. Ghost walked beside him, the dire wolf drawing gasps and whispers from courtiers who'd never seen such a beast. The Great Hall was packed, hundreds of nobles in their finest, all craning to see the northern bastard who'd been legitimized and betrothed to a princess. Robert sat on the Iron Throne, looking miserable in his formal crown and robes. Cersei stood beside him, beautiful as poison, her smile sharp as broken glass. And below, on cushions arranged before the throne, sat the royal children. Joffrey in cloth of gold, his face twisted with barely concealed rage. Myrcella in pale blue silk, her golden hair crowned with pearls, watching Jon with curious green eyes. Tommen, small and round and nervous, clutching a toy lion. Jon walked the length of the hall, Ghost's claws clicking on the marble. Every eye followed him, every whisper cut like a blade. He knelt before the throne. Jon Stark. Robert's voice boomed through the hall. "Legitimized son of Lord Eddard Stark, Warden of the North. You have been granted the name and privileges of House Stark by royal decree. You have been betrothed to Princess Myrcella Baratheon, my beloved daughter. Do you accept these honors?" "I do, Your Grace." Jon's voice was steady despite his hammering heart, "and I swear to be worthy of them." "Good. Rise, Lord Stark. Let the court see you." The hall erupted in applause, some genuine, most forced. He saw faces he didn't recognize, nobles whose names he'd have to learn, all of them already deciding whether he was useful or dangerous. Then Joffrey stood. "Your Grace." The prince's voice was high and sharp. "I have a request." Robert's eyes narrowed. "What request?" I wish to test Lord Stark's worthiness. A spar, to see if this northern bastard—" He paused at Robert's growl. "This northern lord is truly capable of marrying into the royal family." The hall went silent. Cersei's smile widened fractionally. This was a trap. Jon saw it immediately. Joffrey was Cersei's creature. This spar would be designed to humiliate Jon, or worse, to injure him badly enough that the betrothal became impossible. "Absolutely not," Robert began, but Jon spoke over him. "I accept, Your Grace. If Prince Joffrey wishes to test me, I welcome it." Robert's face went red. "Jon, you don't have to. I want to, Your Grace. Let me prove my worth to the prince, and to the court." Barristan stepped forward, his white cloak bright in the afternoon light. "If this spar is to take place, it should be supervised, and with practice weapons only." "Of course," Cersei said smoothly. "We wouldn't want anyone hurt. This is merely a friendly test of skill." Nothing about this was friendly. Jon could see it in Joffrey's eyes. Naked hatred, barely restrained violence. The prince wanted to hurt him, wanted to embarrass him in front of the entire court. Tomorrow morning, Robert decided, in the training yard. Supervised by Ser Barristan, practice weapons, first blood or disarm ends it. "Agreed," Joffrey said, his smile vicious. Jon nodded, not trusting his voice. The presentation continued, but Jon barely heard it. His mind was already racing, planning, remembering everything Barristan had taught him that morning. Joffrey was younger, but he'd been trained by masters since birth. He'd have the best weapons, the best armor, and he'd have Cersei's coaching. Every dirty trick, every way to hurt Jon while making it look accidental. After the ceremony ended, Myrcella found him in the corridor outside. "You shouldn't have accepted," her voice was small, worried. "Joffrey's mean. He'll try to hurt you." "I know." "Then why did you say yes?" Jon knelt so they were eye to eye, because if I'd refused, the court would think I was afraid. "They'd think I wasn't worthy of you, and I won't let them think that." Myrcella's eyes filled with tears. "I don't care what they think. I don't want you hurt. I won't be. I promise." Jon wasn't sure he could keep that promise, but he said it anyway. "Your brother is a prince. I'm just a lord, but I've been training my whole life. I'll be fine." "You'd better be." She reached into her dress and pulled out a ribbon. "Pale blue silk, embroidered with golden lions. This is my favor. Knights wear their ladies' favor into battle. You should wear mine tomorrow." Jon took the ribbon carefully, as if it were made of spider silk and moonlight. "I'll wear it, and I'll win. For you." Myrcella smiled through her tears. "You're not like the other lords. They all say pretty things they don't mean. But you mean everything you say, don't you?" "Good." She stood on her toes and kissed his cheek. Brief, innocent, the kiss of a child. "Win tomorrow, please." She ran off before Jon could respond, leaving him alone in the corridor with her favor in his hand and a ghost at his feet. Tomorrow, he'd face Joffrey before the entire court. Tomorrow, he'd either prove himself or be destroyed. Jon tied the ribbon around his wrist and headed for the armory. He had work to do, and a prince to beat. Jon woke at dawn with his whole body screaming. The duel with Joffrey was in 3 hours. Every muscle ached from yesterday's training with Barristan and the brutal evening session with the Hound, who taught him exactly where to hit a man in armor to make him hurt. "The joints?" the Hound had said, demonstrating on a practice dummy. "Elbow, knee, armpit, where the plates meet, that's where you can drive a blade through. Or in your case, where you can hit hard enough to make the little shit cry." Jon dressed carefully, pulling on the padded gambeson and leather armor that Barristan had provided. Nothing fancy, he wasn't a knight, but it would protect him from the worst of Joffrey's strikes. Myrcella's ribbon was still tied around his wrist. Jon touched it briefly, drawing strength from the memory of her worried face. Ghost watched from the corner, red eyes gleaming. The direwolf had been restless all night, pacing and growling at shadows. Animals knew when danger was coming. A knock at the door made Jon's hand go to his sword, a reflex he'd developed in 3 days at King's Landing. "Jon, it's me." His father, uncle though Jon still couldn't think of him that way, stood in the corridor looking exhausted. His eyes were bloodshot, his clothes rumpled like he'd been up all night. "Father, I didn't know you were in the city. I thought you were still at. I arrived last night. Robert sent for me. He wants me as Hand of the King." Ned entered the room, closing the door behind him. "We need to talk. Before your duel." Jon's stomach tightened. Something was wrong. He could see it in Ned's face. The same look he'd had the day he'd told Jon about Benjen joining the Night's Watch. The look of a man carrying terrible news. What's happened? Ned moved to the window, staring out at the city below. I've been investigating something. Something Jon Arryn started before he died. He was the previous hand. Did Robert tell you? No, he doesn't talk about Jon Arryn much. Jon was a good man, honorable, careful, and he was poisoned for discovering something dangerous. Ned's hands gripped the windowsill. I've been continuing his work, looking into irregularities in the royal family. Jon went cold. What kind of irregularities? The children. Ned turned to face him. Joffrey, Myrcella, Tommen, they're all golden-haired, green-eyed. They look nothing like Robert. They look like the Queen. That's not unusual, is it? It is when you know Robert's history. Ned pulled a book from his cloak, thick, leather-bound, the pages yellowed with age. This is the lineages and histories of the great houses of the Seven Kingdoms. Jon Arryn spent weeks reading it before he died. I've been reading it too. He opened the book to a marked page, showing it to Jon. Lists of names, marriages, births, generations of Baratheons, stretching back centuries. Look at this. Every time a Baratheon married another house, the children had black hair. Every single time. The seed is strong. That's what Jon Arryn kept saying before he died. Baratheon blood dominates. Always. Jon scanned the page. Ned was right. Black-haired children in every generation, regardless of the mother's coloring. Robert has 16 bastards, Ned continued. I've checked. Saw 3 of them myself. All black-haired. All strong, healthy children with his look. But his true-born children with Cersei, golden, like Lannisters. The implication hit Jon like a fist to the gut. You're saying they're not his children. I'm saying they're Lannisters. Pure Lannisters. Which means... Ned's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Cersei and Jaime, brother and sister. The children are products of incest. Jon sat down hard on his bed, his mind reeling. Myrcella, sweet, innocent Myrcella, born of incest. A bastard like he'd been. Only worse, a bastard born of a crime so vile that even the Seven Kingdoms, for all their cruelty, considered it an abomination. Myrcella? Jon whispered. I know you've come to care for her, but she's a bastard in truth. Not in name, but in blood. Does she know? Gods know. The children don't know. How could they? Cersei and Jaime have kept this secret for 14 years. Ned sat beside him, but others are starting to suspect. Jon Arryn knew. That's why he was killed, and now I know. Which means I'm in danger, and so are you. Jon's mind raced. If this gets out, if the truth is revealed, what happens to Myrcella? She loses everything. Her title, her position, her safety. Bastards born of incest are considered abominations. They'd be lucky to be sent to the faith. More likely they'd be killed to prevent them from ever claiming legitimacy. Jon stood abruptly pacing. We can't tell anyone. We have to protect her. This is about the succession, about the realm. If Joffrey is a bastard, he has no right to inherit. And if he tries to take the throne anyway, I don't care about the throne. I care about her. Jon turned to face Ned. She's 10 years old. She didn't choose this. She's innocent. I know, but the truth doesn't care about innocence. Ned's face was anguished. I have to tell Robert. He deserves to know. And once I do, everything will change. The betrothal will be annulled. The children will be sent away, or worse. Cersei will be executed for treason. Jaime, too. The realm will tear itself apart. Jon felt sick. When? Soon, after your duel. I want you away from Joffrey first. Safe. Ned gripped his shoulder. I'm sorry, Jon. I know this isn't what you wanted to hear. But you needed to know the truth before it all comes crashing down. A commotion in the corridor made them both turn. Shouting voices, running feet, the clash of steel. Ned drew his sword. Stay behind me. 4 City Watch gold cloaks poured in, weapons drawn. Lord Eddard Stark, you're under arrest by order of the Queen. Ned's face went white. On what charge? Conspiracy to murder the royal children? The lead gold cloak stepped forward. Drop your sword, my lord. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. This is madness. I've done nothing. You've been asking questions, dangerous questions, about the king's children. The Queen knows. She knows everything. The gold cloak's eyes flicked to Jon. And you, bastard, you're to be confined to your chambers until the Queen decides what to do with you. 4 armed men, he and Ned might be able to fight their way out, but don't. Ned's voice was sharp. Jon, don't fight them. That's exactly what Cersei wants. An excuse to have you killed. But father, do as I say. Go to your chambers. Wait. Robert will sort this out when he returns from his hunt. Won't be back for 3 days. Plenty of time for traitors to be questioned and for accidents to happen. They seized Ned, binding his hands roughly. He didn't resist, but his eyes never left Jon's. Stay alive, Ned said. Whatever happens, stay alive. For your sisters, for your brothers, for... 2 guards remained blocking the door. Your chambers, Lord Stark, now. The Queen's orders. Wanted to call Ghost, to draw his sword, to cut his way through these men and rescue Ned. But Ned's words echoed in his head. That's exactly what Cersei wants. She'd moved first. Arrested Ned before he could tell Robert the truth. And now Jon was trapped, powerless, while his father rotted in a cell somewhere below the Red Keep. Jon walked back to his chambers on numb legs, Ghost following. The guards locked him in from the outside. He stood at the window staring at the city, trying to think. Ned had discovered the truth. Cersei knew he'd discovered it. She'd struck first, moving to protect her children, her position, her life, and Robert was gone, conveniently, suspiciously gone on a hunt that would keep him away for days. How long had Cersei been planning this? A scratching at his door made Jon spin. Not the main door, the servants' entrance, a smaller door he'd barely noticed. It opened a crack. A small figure slipped through. Myrcella. She wore a cloak over her nightgown, her golden hair loose around her shoulders, her eyes wide with fear. Jon, I had to see you. Mother's guards are everywhere, but I know the secret passages, and She saw his face and stopped. What's wrong? Your mother arrested my father, for treason. Myrcella's hand flew to her mouth. No, she wouldn't. Why would she? Because he discovered something. About your family. About you. About me? Her voice was tiny. What about me? Jon looked at this girl, this sweet, innocent girl who'd shown him nothing but kindness, who'd given him her favor, who believed in fairy tales and happy endings. And he made a decision. Nothing, he lied. Nothing about you. Just political things. Boring court business. Myrcella studied his face with those 2 perceptive green eyes. You're lying. You're protecting me from something, just like everyone always does. Her voice hardened, the first time Jon had heard steel in it. I'm not a child. I'm 10 years old. I'm betrothed to you. Tell me the truth. Jon's throat closed. Myrcella, like you were, born of incest, Mother and Uncle Jaime. She sat down on Jon's bed, her small hands folded in her lap. She looked like a porcelain doll, beautiful and fragile and about to shatter. I always wondered why I didn't look like father, why he never seemed to love us the way fathers should. A single tear ran down her cheek. And now I know, because we're not his. We're abominations. You're not an abomination. Jon knelt before her, taking her hands. You're Myrcella. You're kind and smart and brave. Your blood doesn't change that, doesn't it? She looked at him with ancient eyes in a child's face. What happens now when your father tells the king? When everyone knows? I don't know, but I'll protect you. I swear it. Your father's arrested. My mother has won. Myrcella's voice was bitter beyond her years. And the duel, Joffrey will kill you today. Mother's probably armed him with a real sword instead of practice weapons. She'll make it look like an accident. Jon realized she was right. The duel. In less than 2 hours he was supposed to face Joffrey before the court. And now, knowing what he knew, understanding what Cersei was willing to do to protect her secrets, I won't fight him, Jon decided. I'll refuse. Claim illness or... She'll claim you're a coward. She'll annul the betrothal, and then she'll have you killed quietly, without witnesses. She straightened her shoulders. You have to fight, and you have to win. Myrcella, I know what I am now. I know I'm what I am, but you're still you. Still Jon, still the boy who saved a man from a mad horse, who stood up to a prince, who treats me like I matter. She grabbed his hands with surprising strength. If you die today, Mother wins. She gets everything, her secrets safe, her children protected, and you gone. Don't give her that. Fight, win, live. Jon stared at this child who wasn't a child anymore, whose innocence had been ripped away in a single conversation. If I win, everything changes. Your mother will know I'm a threat. But you're strong. Stronger than Joffrey, smarter than Mother thinks. You can survive this. You have to." A bell tolled in the distance. 1 hour until the duel. Myrcella stood on her toes and kissed Jon's cheek again, but this time it felt different. Not a child's affection, but something else. A farewell, perhaps. Or a blessing. "Win," she whispered, "for both of us. Win and live and find a way to save your father. Because if you don't," she didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. She slipped back through the servant's door, disappearing into the secret passages of the Red Keep. Jon stood alone in his chambers, his heart hammering, his mind racing. In 1 hour, he'd face Joffrey. And somewhere below, Ned Stark sat in a cell, waiting for Robert to return or Cersei to act. Jon buckled on his armor with shaking hands. He'd been a bastard, then a Stark, then a betrothed lord. Now he was something else, a target. And the only way to survive was to win. Ghost pressed against his leg, solid and warm and real. Jon gripped the direwolf's fur and tried to breathe. 1 hour, 1 fight. Everything on the line, he walked toward the training yard like a man walking to his execution, and prayed he'd walk back. The training yard was packed with every lord and lady in King's Landing. They'd come to watch the northern bastard fight a prince, to see blood, to witness humiliation, to feed on spectacle like vultures on carrion. Jon walked into the center of the yard, his leather armor creaking, Myrcella's ribbon still tied around his wrist. Ghost had wanted to follow, but Jon had locked him in his chambers. If things went wrong, when things went wrong, he didn't want the direwolf killed trying to protect him. Joffrey stood on the opposite side, and Jon's blood ran cold. The prince wore full-plate armor, not practice armor. Real steel polished to a mirror shine, every piece fitted perfectly to his body. And in his hand, not a practice sword, but a real blade. Castle-forged steel, sharp enough to kill. "Your Grace." Barristan Selmy stepped forward, his face thunderous. This was to be a practice bout. Why does Prince Joffrey carry live steel? He'll fight as a prince fights, with real weapons. Unless Lord Stark objects? Unless he's afraid? If he fought, Joffrey could legally kill him and call it an accident. Jon met Barristan's eyes. The old knight's face was grim, but he gave the smallest nod. "Fight. Show them what you are." "I don't object, Your Grace," Jon's voice carried across the yard. "Let the prince fight however he wishes." A servant brought Jon a real sword, not Valyrian steel, not even particularly fine steel, but sharp enough. And unlike Joffrey, Jon wore only leather. The crowd murmured, "This wasn't a fair fight. This was an execution." Joffrey's smile was vicious. "Any last words, bastard? Yield when you've had enough. I don't want to hurt you." The crowd gasped at the audacity. Joffrey's face went purple with rage. "Begin," Cersei's voice rang out before Barristan could set proper rules. Joffrey charged immediately, his sword aimed at Jon's chest. A killing blow, no hesitation, no honor. Jon sidestepped. Barristan's first lesson, never be where your enemy expects. And the blade whistled past his ribs, close enough to feel the wind of it. The crowd roared. Joffrey spun, swinging wildly. Jon ducked, rolled, came up behind him. He could have struck then. The back of Joffrey's knee was exposed, but he held back. Hitting a prince, even in a sanctioned duel, could mean death. "Stand still and fight, coward," Joffrey screamed. "I am fighting, you're just slow." Jon circled, keeping his distance, watching for patterns in Joffrey's attacks. There. The prince favored high strikes, aimed for the head and shoulders, left his legs unprotected because no one had ever been brave or stupid enough to target a prince below the belt. Joffrey lunged again. Jon met the blade with his own. Just enough contact to redirect it, not enough to create a binding that Joffrey's superior strength could exploit. The Hound's lesson: don't fight power with power. Use it against itself. Joffrey stumbled. Jon hooked his ankle, the same move he'd used on Meryn Trant, and the prince went down hard, his armor clanging against stone. The crowd went silent. Joffrey climbed to his feet, his face murderous. "I'll kill you for that." "You can try." Joffrey attacked again, faster now, angrier. All technique abandoned in favor of rage, Jon blocked, parried, gave ground when he needed to. His arms were already tiring. Joffrey's blade was heavier, and every impact jarred bones. But Jon had something Joffrey didn't. He'd been fighting for his life since he was old enough to hold a sword, fighting to prove he belonged. fighting to earn respect from boys who hated him for existing. Joffrey had only ever fought opponents who let him win. Jon saw the opening when Joffrey overextended on a thrust. He sidestepped, brought his blade down on Joffrey's wrist, the joint where the gauntlet met the vambrace, the hound's target. Joffrey screamed. His sword fell from nerveless fingers clattering on the stones. Jon kicked it away. "Yield," Jon said quietly. "Never!" Joffrey lunged barehanded, trying to tackle Jon. Stupid, desperate. Jon grabbed his arm, used his momentum against him, and threw him face first into the dirt. Jon's blade found the gap between helmet and gorget, pressing against the soft flesh of Joffrey's neck. "Yield," Jon repeated. Silence. Absolute silence in the training yard. Then from her seat, Cersei's voice, "Joffrey, yield." Joffrey's voice was a sob. "I yield." Jon stepped back, lowering his blade. The crowd erupted, some in approval, some in shock, all of them buzzing with the scandal of it. The northern bastard had beaten a prince. Jon turned to bow to Cersei, as was proper after a duel, and saw the crossbowman. On the wall, above the crowd, a gold cloak, his weapon aimed not at Jon, but at— "Down!" Jon screamed, diving toward Myrcella's seat. The bolt flew. Jon felt it graze his shoulder, cutting through leather but missing flesh. He crashed into Myrcella, knocking her from her chair just as a second bolt struck where her head had been. Chaos. Guards rushing the walls, Barristan's sword out searching for threats, the crowd screaming and running. Jon covered Myrcella with his body, feeling her small frame trembling beneath him. "Are you hurt?" he asked. "No. You saved me. Again." Her voice was muffled against his chest. Guards dragged the crossbowman down from the wall. He was dead already, poison probably taken before he could be questioned. A gold cloak, one of Cersei's own men. But that made no sense. Why would Cersei try to kill her own daughter? Unless. Jon looked up at the queen. Cersei's face was white with shock. Genuine shock, not performance. She hadn't ordered this. Someone else had, someone who wanted Myrcella dead, who wanted to frame Cersei, who wanted chaos. Littlefinger, Barristan breathed, reaching the same conclusion. Or Varys, someone playing a deeper game. Robert's voice boomed across the yard. What in seven hells is happening here? Robert's fury shook the Red Keep. "Someone tried to kill my daughter." His roar echoed through the throne room where he'd summoned everyone. Cersei, Jon, Barristan, the small council, guards, witnesses, in my castle, during a sanctioned duel. "Who was responsible?" "The assassin is dead, Your Grace," Varys said smoothly. "Poison, he cannot be questioned. But he wore the gold cloak. A member of the City Watch, commanded by you, Littlefinger." Robert's eyes turned to the Master of Coin. "Explain." "Your Grace, I command the City Watch in name only. The men are loyal to their captains, who are loyal to the highest bidder. Anyone with enough gold could have bought this man's services." Littlefinger spread his hands helplessly. "Without being able to question him, we may never know who hired him. A dead assassin. No answers. My daughter nearly murdered, and no one to blame. Your Grace." Jon stepped forward, his wounded shoulder bandaged but still bleeding through. "I have a theory." Every eye turned to him. Cersei's face was unreadable. "Speak," Robert commanded. "The bolt wasn't aimed at me. It was aimed at Princess Myrcella. After I'd defeated Prince Joffrey, after I'd proven myself in front of the court." Jon chose his words carefully. "Someone wanted to kill her and blame the Starks, make it look like revenge for whatever reason they could invent. But who benefits?" Robert demanded. "Who gains from my daughter's death? Anyone who profits from chaos." Jon met Littlefinger's eyes. "Anyone who plays the game well enough to stay hidden while others destroy each other." Littlefinger's smile was thin. "Quite the theory, Lord Stark. Pity you have no proof." "I have this." Jon pulled something from his belt, a scrap of cloth, torn from the assassin's sleeve during the chaos. It bore a sigil, barely visible, but there. A mockingbird. Littlefinger's personal sigil. The throne room erupted. "Guards!" Robert bellowed. "Arrest Littlefinger! Take him to the black cells." "Your Grace, I can explain," Littlefinger began, but gold cloaks were already seizing him. His mask slipped for just a moment, revealing cold fury beneath the smooth courtesy. As they dragged him away, Littlefinger's eyes met Jon's. The message was clear. This isn't over. Robert collapsed onto the throne, suddenly looking every one of his years. "Gods, my own Master of Coin, trying to kill my daughter. What's next? My queen plotting treason? Cersei's face went white. Ned stepped forward from where he'd been standing with the other witnesses, released from the cells the moment Robert returned. Your Grace, there's something you need to know. About the children. About— Not now, Ned. Robert's voice was exhausted. I can't handle any more revelations today. Tomorrow, we'll talk tomorrow. But tomorrow might be too late. Jon saw it in Cersei's eyes. The calculation, the planning. She'd survived today. Her secret was still safe. But Ned knew, Jon knew, Littlefinger knew wherever they'd taken him. How long before she acted? That night, Jon was summoned to Robert's chambers. The king looked haggard, a cup of wine in one hand, staring at nothing. You saved her, my daughter. You risked your life for her. Anyone would have, Your Grace. No, they wouldn't. Robert took a long drink. The court would have watched her die and then argued about who benefited. But you moved, didn't think. Just acted, like you did with the boar. The boar? On the hunt. When it charged me, you jumped in front of it. Took a goring to save my life. Robert's eyes were wet. I remember. I was drunk, but I remember. You bled for me, and today you bled for Myrcella. Why? Jon didn't know how to answer that, because it was right. Robert laughed bitterly. Everyone talks about doing right. No one actually does it, except you and Ned. The Honorable Starks making the rest of us look like the corrupt shits we are. He stood, crossing to Jon, and did something unexpected. He pulled him into an embrace, brief, awkward, smelling of wine and sweat, but genuine. You're the son I should have had, the boy I would have been proud to call mine. Robert released him, his face serious. Tomorrow, Ned's going to tell me something terrible. I can see it in his eyes. Something about Cersei, about the children. And when he does, everything's going to change. The betrothal might end. The court will tear itself apart. War might come. Your Grace, but I want you to know something first. No matter what happens, no matter what truths come out or lies are exposed, you're a good man, Jon Stark. You deserve good things. You deserve happiness. And if the gods were just, you'd get it. Robert drained his cup and gestured to the door. Go. Rest. Tend that shoulder. Tomorrow we face whatever's coming. In the corridor, he found Myrcella waiting. She shouldn't have been there. It was late. She should have been in her chambers. But she stood in the shadows, her golden hair loose, her eyes enormous. Thank you, she said simply, for saving me again. I'll always save you. That's what Jon paused. What was he to her now? Betrothed? Protector? Friend? That's what I do. I know what mother is, what I am. What's going to happen when your father tells the king? Myrcella's voice was steady despite the tears on her cheeks. But I want you to know, whatever happens, whatever I lose, I'm glad I met you. I'm glad you were kind to me. Even if it was all for nothing, wasn't it? She smiled sadly. When the truth comes out, I'll lose everything. My name, my title, my future. They might send me away. They might do worse. And you'll be released from the betrothal. Free to marry someone worthy, someone who isn't. Don't. Jon knelt before her. Don't say it. You are worthy. You're the worthiest person I've met in this entire cursed city. And I don't care what blood runs in your veins. You're Myrcella. That's enough. She kissed his cheek one more time, then ran before he could say anything else. Jon stood alone in the corridor, his shoulder throbbing, his heart aching. Tomorrow, the truth would come out. Tomorrow, everything would change. But tonight, he'd saved a princess twice in one day. And that, somehow, was enough. Dawn came too quickly. Jon stood in the throne room with Ned, watching Robert pace before the Iron Throne like a caged animal. The king hadn't slept. None of them had. Ned had spent the night explaining everything. The book, the research, the black-haired children, the evidence that Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen were not Robert's, but products of incest between Cersei and Jaime. Robert had listened in silence. Then he'd started drinking, then he'd stopped drinking and started planning. Now, as the sun rose over King's Landing, the reckoning began. Bring her, Robert commanded. The throne room doors opened. Gold cloaks dragged Cersei in, her hands bound, her golden hair disheveled. She wore a simple dress. They'd stripped her of her jewels, her crown, her symbols of power. But her eyes were still defiant. Robert. Her voice was cold. This is madness. Release me at once. Madness is what you've done, what you've been doing for 14 years. I've done nothing but serve as your queen. You've served my bed with your brother's cock. Robert's voice was deadly quiet. You've given me bastards and called them princes. You've made me a laughingstock and thought I was too drunk to notice. Cersei's mask cracked, just slightly. You have no proof. I have this. Ned held up the book. Every Baratheon union in history, black-haired children. Every time. Every single time. But your children? Golden. Lannister golden. And I have this. He produced another document, Jon Arryn's final notes. Names of Robert's bastards, all black-haired. All clearly his, unlike your children. Circumstantial, Cersei spat. Hair color isn't proof of adultery. Watching everyone, as is my duty. I have reports from servants, witnesses who saw you and Sir Jaime in compromising positions. I even have testimony from the former Grand Maester who helped you procure moon tea after each of Robert's attentions to prevent his seed from taking root. Cersei's face went white. Moon tea, Robert repeated, his voice shaking. You poisoned my children before they could be born and replaced them with your brother's bastards. They are my children. Cersei's composure shattered. Mine. I carried them, birthed them, raised them while you drank yourself into stupor after stupor, while you called out Lyanna's name in your sleep, while you whored your way through the 7 kingdoms. They are abominations, Robert roared. Products of incest, bastards wearing crowns. And you? You dared to put one of them on my throne. I did what I had to do. For my family, for my children. Cersei's eyes blazed. You think I wanted this? Wanted to marry a drunk who loved a dead woman more than his living wife? Who couldn't even bother to learn his children's names? Because they weren't my children. Robert's hand went to his warhammer. He'd brought it specifically for this, Jon realized. The weapon he'd killed Rhaegar with. You cuckolded me. You broke every vow. You committed treason of the highest order. And what will you do? Cersei laughed, the sound edged with hysteria. Kill me. Execute your queen in front of the court. My father will bring the Westerlands down on your head. You'll have civil war. Let him try. Robert turned to the guards. Bring in the Kingslayer. Jaime Lannister was dragged in, his golden armor stripped away, wearing only a simple tunic. His hands were bound with chains, but his face was calm, almost serene. Your Grace, he said with a slight bow, I assume this is about my sister. It's about your children. Robert's voice was ice. The 3 bastards you fathered on the Queen. Jaime's eyes flicked to Cersei, then back to Robert. For a moment, Jon thought he might deny it. Lie. Fight. Instead, he smiled. Yes, they're mine. All 3. Beautiful, aren't they? His voice was almost proud. Better than anything you could have produced, you drunken fool. The throne room erupted in shocked whispers. Cersei made a strangled sound. Jaime, shut up. Why? Jaime looked at her with something like love. It's over, Cersei. Can't you see they have the proof? The witnesses. The truth is out. Let's at least die honestly. You won't die, Robert said. Not yet. First you'll answer for your crimes, both of you. And then he turned to the assembled court. The children. Bring them. Not the children. They were innocent in all this. Myrcella entered first, flanked by Septa Mordain. She wore a simple dress, her hair braided. Her eyes found Jon's across the room, terrified, pleading. Then Tommen, small and round and crying quietly. Finally Joffrey struggling against the guards, his face purple with rage. Father, tell them to release me. I'm the prince. You're nothing. Robert's words cut through Joffrey's protests like a blade. You're a bastard born of incest. You have no claim to my throne, no claim to my name, no claim to anything. Joffrey went silent, his mouth working soundlessly. Myrcella was crying now, quiet tears streaming down her face. Tommen had collapsed to his knees, overwhelmed. Jon wanted to go to them, to shield them from this, but Ned's hand on his shoulder held him back. The law is clear, Robert continued, his voice hollow. Children born of incest are abominations. They are to be stripped of all titles and privileges. Their very existence is treason against the natural order. No, you can't punish them for our sins. They're children, innocent children. They're evidence of your crime. Robert wouldn't look at them, and the punishment for treason is death. The throne room went silent. Jon felt the word like a blade to the gut. Death for Myrcella, for the girl who'd given him her favor, who'd shown him kindness when no one else had. Your Grace. Ned stepped forward. I must object. The children are innocent. They didn't choose their parentage. To execute them would be justice. Robert's face was stone, cold and brutal, but justice nonetheless. Cersei and Jaime created this abomination. The children are the proof. They cannot be allowed to live, not as potential claimants, not as reminders. Then I claim mercy. Jon's voice rang out before he could stop himself. Every eye turned to him. Your Grace, I claim the right to speak for Princess Myrcella. She's not a princess, Robert said. Not anymore, or Snow, or whatever name she'll bear now. Jon stepped forward, ignoring Ned's warning look. She's 10 years old. She's done nothing but exist. If that's a crime worthy of death, then execute me too. Because I was a bastard. I existed without choosing to, and you gave me a second chance. Give her the same. Robert's jaw clenched. Jon, she's innocent. She saved my life once, warning me about her mother's plots. She's kind and good, and everything a lady should be. Kill her and you're no better than Aerys Targaryen, executing children for their father's crimes. The comparison landed like a thunderclap. Robert had fought a war to end Aerys's madness, to stop the execution of innocents. They can't remain in King's Landing, Barristan said quietly. That much is certain. But Lord Jon is right. The children are blameless. Perhaps exile? Send them to the faith. Let them live as penitents, stripped of power but alive. Robert stood silent for a long moment. Jon could see the war in his eyes. Vengeance versus mercy. Rage versus reason. Finally, he spoke. The boys go to the Citadel in the faith. They'll take vows. Serve the realm in other ways. They'll never hold land, never marry, never threaten the succession. His eyes found Myrcella. And the girl goes to, I'll take responsibility for her. Make sure she never threatens your throne. Your ward. Robert's voice was strange. You do that? Raise your enemy's daughter? She's just a girl who needs protection, and I swore to protect her. Robert's face softened, just fractionally. You really are Ned's son, too honorable for your own good. He turned to the guards. Take the boys to their new homes. The girl goes north with Lord Jon. They leave within the week. Relief flooded through Jon. She'd live. Myrcella would live. And the parents? Ned asked quietly. Robert's face hardened again. Cersei goes to the faith. They can have her. Let her spend the rest of her life atoning for her sins. He turned to Jaime. But the Kingslayer, the man who broke every vow, who fathered bastards on the queen, who betrayed me for 14 years. Jaime stood straight, meeting Robert's eyes without flinching. I'd say I'm sorry, Jaime said. But I'm not. I loved her. I still love her. I'd do it all again. Then you'll die for it. Robert drew his dagger. But not by execution, by combat. You and me, one final fight. Give you the honorable death you don't deserve. Your Grace, you can't, Barristan began, but Robert silenced him with a look. I need this, old friend. I need to end this myself, with blood and steel, the way it should be ended. He looked at Jaime. Tomorrow, at dawn, in the courtyard, you and me, to the death. Jaime smiled, that infuriating Lannister smile. I accept. Though you should know, Your Grace, I'm faster than I was at 15, and you're much slower than you were at 20. Then it should be an even fight. Robert gestured to the guards. Take them away, all of them. Let them spend their last night preparing for what comes next. The guards led them out. Cersei went silently now, broken. Jaime walked with his head high. And the children? Myrcella looked back at Jon as they took her away. Her lips moved, forming words. Thank you. Jon nodded. He'd saved her, for now. But at what cost? That night, Myrcella came to Jon's chambers through the servants' passages one last time. She looked smaller somehow, diminished by the loss of her title, her future, everything she'd been. You saved me again, she said quietly. Why? Because you're worth saving. I'm a bastard, an abomination, proof of the worst crime my parents could commit. Her voice was hollow. I'm everything you were, everything you escaped from. Why would you tie yourself to that? Jon had been asking himself the same question. The smart thing would be to let her go, to wash his hands of the Lannisters and their sins. But when he looked at Myrcella, he didn't see Cersei's daughter or Jaime's bastard. He saw a girl who'd shown him kindness, who'd believed in him when no one else had, who deserved better than death for crimes she didn't commit. Because someone once showed me mercy, legitimized me, gave me a future I didn't deserve. Jon took her hand. Now it's my turn to do the same. What happens now? We go north. You'll live at Winterfell as my ward. Caitlin won't be happy about it, but Jon almost laughed. Actually, she'll hate it. But you'll be safe, protected. And maybe, someday, you can have a life again. A life. Myrcella repeated the words like a foreign concept. What kind of life can a bastard have? I'm still figuring that out myself. Jon smiled. But we'll figure it out together. She leaned against him, small and fragile and broken, and Jon held her while she cried for everything she'd lost. Tomorrow, Robert and Jaime would fight. Tomorrow, the Lannister era would end. Tomorrow, Jon would take Myrcella north and somehow build her a future from the ashes of her past. But tonight, he just held a girl who'd lost everything, and tried to believe they could both survive what came next. Dawn broke cold over King's Landing. Jon stood in the courtyard of the Red Keep, Ghost pressed against his leg, watching servants prepare the dueling ground. They'd cleared a space 50 feet across, marked with white chalk. Weapon racks stood at each end, swords, axes, maces. Whatever the combatants chose, this wasn't a formal duel. This was execution, disguised as combat. Robert wanted blood, wanted to kill the man who'd cuckolded him, who'd broken every vow, who'd fathered bastards on his queen and let one of them sit the Iron Throne. But Jaime Lannister had demanded trial by combat, his right as a knight of the Kingsguard, and Robert, drunk on rage and wounded pride, had agreed to be the accuser's champion. This is madness. Ned stood beside Jon, his face grim. Robert's 50, fat, out of practice. Jaime's the best swordsman in the 7 kingdoms. This won't be a fight. It'll be a slaughter. Maybe that's what Robert wants, Jon said quietly. To die fighting, like the warrior he used to be. He has a kingdom to rule. Children, real children this time. He can't throw his life away for vengeance. But Jon understood. Robert had lost everything that mattered to him. Lyanna to death, his children to lies, his marriage to betrayal. What did he have left except the chance to die with a hammer in his hand? The crowd assembled. Every lord and lady in King's Landing, drawn by the spectacle. Executions were common, but a king fighting a Kingsguard? That was legend in the making. Cersei was brought out in chains, forced to watch. Her face was hollow, her eyes red from crying. They'd stripped her of everything. Crown, jewels, dignity. Tomorrow she'd be sent to the faith to live out her days in penance. But today, she'd watch the father of her children try to kill the man she loved. Jaime emerged from the barracks, wearing simple armor, not the white plate of the Kingsguard. They'd stripped him of that too. Just steel and leather, functional but plain. He looked calm, almost serene, like a man who'd already accepted death and found peace in it. Robert came from the opposite direction, and the crowd gasped. The king wore his old armor from the rebellion. They'd had to let it out, his belly strained against the breastplate, and Jon could see where straps had been lengthened to accommodate his bulk. But it was still impressive. Black steel chased with gold, the crowned stag of House Baratheon emblazoned on the chest, and in his hands, the warhammer, the same weapon that had killed Rhaegar Targaryen at the Trident. Gentlemen. Barristan Selmy stood between them, his white cloak bright in the morning sun. This is trial by combat. You fight until one yields or dies. The gods will judge the truth of the accusations. Are the terms understood? Perfectly, Robert growled. Crystal clear, Jaime said, selecting a long sword from the rack. He tested its weight, made a few practice cuts. Perfect form, economical movements. A master at work. Robert didn't bother with practice. He just stood there, hammer resting against his shoulder, watching Jaime with dead eyes. Begin. Jaime moved first, a blur of speed closing the distance in 3 strides. His sword came down in a diagonal slash aimed at Robert's neck. Robert's hammer met it mid-strike. The impact rang like a bell, sending shockwaves through both weapons. Jaime's blade skittered off the hammer's head, his arm shaking from the force. Robert swung. Jaime dodged, the hammer whistling past his head close enough to stir his hair. The weapon buried itself in the ground where Jaime had been standing, cracking the stone. You're slow, Jaime said, circling. 15 years of wine and whores. You've gone soft, your grace. I only need to hit you once. Robert yanked the hammer free, scattering stone fragments. They engaged again. Jaime's sword was everywhere, high, low, thrusting, slashing, testing Robert's defenses. But the king's hammer blocked each strike, the sheer mass of the weapon creating an impenetrable wall of steel. Jon watched, his heart in his throat. Robert was slow, but he was strong. Immensely strong, each hammer blow forced Jaime back, disrupted his rhythm. But Jaime was faster, so much faster. He danced around Robert's strikes, looking for openings, probing for weakness. "You killed her, you know," Robert said between swings. "Lyanna, your brother stole her, raped her, killed her giving birth to his bastard. And you knew, you were there when Aerys burned her father alive. When he murdered her brother, you could have stopped it." I was 16. Jaime's blade scored a hit on Robert's shoulder, cutting through a strap. "I was a boy in white armor, sworn to protect a mad king. What would you have had me do? Your duty, the right thing. Not stand there while innocents died, like you did the right thing." Jaime's voice turned vicious. "Marrying Cersei for her father's gold, whoring through the 7 kingdoms while your wife raised children alone, getting so drunk you couldn't tell your own sons weren't yours?" The hammer came down with all his strength. Jaime rolled aside, but not quite fast enough. The weapon's edge caught his leg, crushing steel and flesh. Jaime went down, his face white with pain. The crowd screamed. Robert stood over him, hammer raised for the killing blow. "Any last words, Kingslayer?" Jaime looked up at him, blood running from his mouth where he'd bitten his tongue. "Just one. I loved her. Everything I did for love. Can you say the same?" Robert's hammer trembled. For a moment, Jon thought he might lower it, might show mercy. Then Cersei screamed, "Jaime, no!" And Robert brought the hammer down. Jaime rolled, not away, toward Robert, inside his guard. His sword came up, finding the gap under Robert's arm where the armor didn't quite meet. The blade slid between ribs. Robert's hammer fell from nerveless fingers. He staggered back, looking down at the sword protruding from his side with something like surprise. You actually." Jaime pulled the blade free. Blood poured from the wound, dark and arterial. Robert collapsed to his knees. The courtyard erupted in chaos. Guards rushed forward. Ned ran to Robert's side. Barristan moved to stop Jaime from finishing the kill. But Jaime didn't move. He just stood there, sword lowering, watching Robert bleed. "Maester!" Ned screamed. "Maester, your grace, you need to lie still. Let me—" "No." Robert's voice was wet with blood. "No maesters. No prolonging this." He looked at Ned, his oldest friend, and something passed between them. "I'm dying, aren't I?" Cold, spreading from the wound. Robert coughed, blood spattering his beard. "Stupid, getting killed by the Kingslayer. The irony's not lost on me." "Your grace," Barristan knelt beside him. "I can still stop him, execute him for—" "No, he won. Fair fight. The gods judged." Robert's eyes found Jaime. "You loved her. I believe you. Doesn't make it right. Doesn't make the children any less bastards. But I believe you." He turned to Ned. "My will, you remember what we discussed? You named me Lord Protector until your true heir comes of age. Good. Good." Robert's breathing was labored now, each word costing him. "Stannis, my brother, he's the heir now. Find him. Bring him to King's Landing. Make him king. He'll hate it, but he'll do his duty. He always does his duty." "I will, and Jon." Robert's eyes found him in the crowd. "Come here, boy." Jon pushed through, dropping to his knees beside the dying king. "Your grace, you saved my daughter, protected her when I wanted her dead. That's what a good man does. What I should have done—" Robert's hand gripped Jon's, slick with blood. "You're better than me, better than I ever was. Don't let this place destroy that. Don't let them make you cruel." "I won't. Liar. They'll try, the court, the game. It corrupts everyone eventually." Robert coughed again, harder. "But maybe you'll last longer than most. Maybe you'll actually do some good." His eyes were fading now. Jon could see death approaching, patient and inevitable. "One more thing. The betrothal. It's void. Myrcella's a bastard. You're released from all obligations." Robert's grip tightened. "But that doesn't mean you can't—" He didn't finish. His hand went slack. Robert Baratheon, first of his name, king of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the First Men, died in the courtyard of the Red Keep with blood on his lips and a hole in his side. The crowd went silent. Then someone shouted, "The king is dead! Long live King Stannis!" But Stannis wasn't there. He was at Dragonstone, or Storm's End, or wherever he'd gone after Robert's coronation. It would take weeks to find him, to bring him to King's Landing, to crown him. In the meantime, Ned was Lord Protector, and the realm held its breath. They arrested Jaime immediately. dragged him to the black cells, his wounded leg leaving a trail of blood across the courtyard. Cersei was already being loaded onto a wagon bound for the Great Sept. She watched them take Jaime away, her face blank with shock. "Cersei," Jaime called out. "Cersei, I'm sorry." A guard hit him, silencing him. They disappeared into the keep. Jon stood over Robert's body, trying to process what had just happened. The king was dead, killed by the man he'd tried to execute. The realm was in chaos, and Jon was free. The betrothal was void. Myrcella was a bastard with no claim to anything. Jon owed her nothing, could wash his hands of the Lannisters and return north with his honor intact. But when he looked across the courtyard, he saw Myrcella being held by her septa. The girl was sobbing, her small frame shaking. She just watched her father kill her uncle-father, watched the king who'd wanted her dead die in front of her. She was alone, completely alone. And Jon had promised to protect her. He crossed to her, gently taking her from the septa's arms. "I've got her," he said quietly. Myrcella buried her face in his chest, her tears soaking through his tunic. "He's dead. The king's dead, and Uncle Jaime killed him, and Mother's gone, and you're safe. I've got you, I promised, remember? But the betrothal, I heard what he said, you're free. I don't want to be free, not if it means leaving you alone." Jon held her tighter. "We're going north, together, like I said. Nothing's changed, not the important things." Ned approached, his face grave. "Jon, we need to talk. About the succession, about Stannis, about—" "Later," Jon said. "Right now, I need to get Myrcella somewhere safe, somewhere quiet." Ned looked at the girl in Jon's arms, then at Jon's face, and something shifted in his expression. "You really care for her?" "Of course I care for her." "That's not what I meant." Ned's voice was gentle. "But all right. Take her to her chambers, I'll post guards. Keep her safe until we can arrange transport north." Jon carried Myrcella through the keep, Ghost following, servants and courtiers pressed against the walls, staring, whispering. The northern bastard, carrying the Lannister girl, the princess who wasn't a princess, the future that shouldn't exist. In her chambers, Jon set her down gently. She was still crying, quiet tears that wouldn't stop. "I don't know what to do," she whispered. "I don't know how to be this, a bastard, an exile, nothing." "You're not nothing. You're Myrcella." Jon knelt before her. "And that's enough. It has to be enough. Is it? Was it enough for you, when you were a bastard?" Jon thought about all those years at Winterfell. The whispers, Catelyn's hatred, the constant reminder that he didn't belong. "No," he admitted. "It wasn't enough. I was miserable, angry, lost." "Then how did you survive?" "I found people who saw me, really saw me, not the bastard, just me, Robb, Arya, even Ned, though he couldn't show it openly." Jon took her hand. "And now you have me. I see you. Not Cersei's daughter or Jaime's bastard, just Myrcella, and that's who I'll protect. Who I'll help become whatever she wants to be." Myrcella's tears finally stopped. She looked at him with those green eyes, Lannister eyes, but also just hers. "What if I want to be yours?" Jon's breath caught. "What? The betrodhal's void. But what if I don't want it to be? What if I still want what we were supposed to have? Myrcella, you're 10. You don't know what you want, not really. I know I don't want to be alone. I know I trust you more than anyone in this entire city. I know—" She paused, searching for words. "I know you're the only good thing in my life right now. Is that enough?" "We'll figure it out," he said finally. "Together, in the north, away from this place, away from all of it. Together," Myrcella repeated. She leaned against him, exhausted from crying, from trauma, from losing everything in one terrible morning. And Jon held her while the city outside mourned a dead king and prepared for the next one. The Game of Thrones continued, but Jon and Myrcella were leaving the board, heading north, to whatever future they could build from the ashes of the past. 6 months later, Winterfell wore its winter coat. Jon stood on the battlements, watching snow fall across the courtyard below. Ghost sat beside him, massive now, nearly as tall as a horse at the shoulder. The direwolf's breath misted in the cold air. The North had welcomed them back. Robb had embraced Jon like a brother returned from war. Arya had punched his arm and demanded stories. Even Bran, crippled now from his fall, had smiled to see him. Only Catelyn remained cold, but that was expected. Jon had brought Myrcella Baratheon, Myrcella Waters she called herself now, to live at Winterfell as his ward. A Lannister bastard, living under the Stark roof, Catelyn's hatred had found a new target, but Myrcella was safe. That mattered more than Catelyn's disapproval. "Jon!" Robb's voice called from below. "Rider coming, royal messenger." Jon descended quickly, his boots crunching on fresh snow. In the courtyard, a man in Baratheon colors dismounted, pulling a sealed letter from his saddlebag. "Lord Jon Stark, I bear a message from King Stannis Baratheon, first of his name." Jon broke the seal and read. His hands started shaking halfway through. 3 weeks later, Jon stood in the great hall of the Red Keep, wearing clothes he barely recognized as his own. Black leather and gray silk, finer than anything he'd owned before. The white wolf of Stark embroidered in silver thread on his chest. And around his shoulders, a cloak, not quite the royal purple, but close. A lord's cloak, a prince's cloak. The throne room was packed. Every lord in the 7 kingdoms who mattered, all gathered to witness Stannis Baratheon's coronation. And what came after? Stannis sat on the Iron Throne, looking as miserable as Jon felt. The new king had arrived in King's Landing 4 months after Robert's death, grudging and resentful, doing his duty because that's what Stannis did. He'd executed Jaime Lannister 3 days after taking the throne. Trial by combat Jaime had requested again. Stannis had accepted, then beaten him in 15 moves. Clean, efficient, brutal. Cersei was still at the Great Sept, living out her penance. Her children were scattered, Joffrey at the Citadel, Tommen with the Faith, Myrcella at Winterfell. The Lannister era was over. Jon Stark. Stannis' voice cut through Jon's thoughts. "Approach the throne. You saved my brother's life on a hunt," Stannis said, his voice carrying to every corner. "You protected Princess Myrcella when assassins struck. You showed mercy when vengeance would have been easier. You proved yourself honorable when this court is drowning in corruption." Robert named no heir of his body. His children were bastards born of incest. The throne passes to me by law. But a king needs loyal men. Men he can trust, absolutely. Stannis stood, descending the throne steps. "Lord Eddard tells me you refused a lordship, refused lands and titles, said you didn't deserve them. That true?" "Yes, your grace. I was born a bastard. Being legitimized is gift enough." "Fool. A man's birth doesn't determine his worth. His actions do." Stannis pulled Jon to his feet. "You've proven your worth 12 times over. And I reward service. I reward loyalty. I reward men who do what's right even when it costs them everything." He gestured to a servant who brought forward a rolled parchment sealed with the Baratheon stag. "I hereby grant you Dragonstone," Stannis announced. The hall erupted in whispers. Dragonstone, the ancient seat of House Targaryen, given to the Baratheon heir, the most strategic fortress in the 7 kingdoms. "Your grace, I can't. I don't. You can, and you will." Dragonstone needs a strong castellan, someone trustworthy, someone who won't use it to plot rebellion. Stannis' thin lips curved in what might have been a smile, and someone who can keep an eye on the narrow sea. "The free cities have been making noise. Pirates harassing our ships. You'll command the garrison, defend the realm, report directly to me." Jon's mind reeled. Dragonstone, a castle, a command, power he'd never imagined. "But I'm needed in the north. My family to the throne." Stannis' eyes were hard. "Unless you're refusing your king's command." It was a test. Jon saw that clearly. Stannis was seeing if he put family over duty, comfort over service. "No, your grace. I accept. I'll serve however you require." "Good." Stannis returned to the throne. "There's one more matter. Your betrothal." Jon's heart stopped. The betrothal to Myrcella had been void since Robert's death. Legally, Jon owed her nothing. The girl, Myrcella Waters, is living at Winterfell as your ward. Robert freed you from the obligation before he died. You could marry anyone, any lord's daughter, any lady of the realm. Stannis paused. "But I'm told you've refused all offers. Why?" "Because I made a promise, your grace, to protect her, to help her build a life. That promise doesn't end just because the law changed. And if I ordered you to marry someone else, someone who could cement alliances, then I'd obey, your grace. But I'd ask permission to still honor my promise to Myrcella, to ensure she's cared for." Stannis studied him for a long moment. Then he did something Jon had never seen. He smiled. Actually smiled. You're either the most honorable fool in Westeros or the cleverest man I've met. I haven't decided which. He leaned forward. I'm not ordering you to marry anyone. Do what you think is right. Just know that Dragonstone is yours. And with it comes responsibility. The realm expects its lords to produce heirs, to secure their holdings, to think beyond themselves. I understand, Your Grace. Do you? Because I suspect you're more tangled up in emotion than you want to admit. Stannis' voice dropped, meant for Jon alone. That girl, she saved your life as much as you saved hers. Don't lose her because you think duty demands it. Sometimes duty and desire align. Recognize that when it happens. Lord Jon Stark is hereby named Lord of Dragonstone and Prince of Dragonstone in the ancient Targaryen tradition. He will command the garrison, defend the narrow sea, and serve as my voice in the Eastern realm. Let all hear witness. Long live Prince Jon, someone shouted. Long live the Prince of Dragonstone. The hall erupted in cheers. Jon stood frozen, trying to process what had just happened. Prince, Lord, Commander, all titles he'd never imagined wearing. After the ceremony, Ned found him in a side corridor. Prince of Dragonstone, Ned said, and his face held something Jon had never seen before. Pride. Open, unashamed pride. The first Stark to hold that title in 300 years. It's too much. I don't deserve. Stop. Ned gripped his shoulders. Stop saying you don't deserve things. You've earned this. Every title, every honor, every scrap of recognition. You saved a king, protected a child, showed mercy when others screamed for blood. If anyone deserves Dragonstone, it's you. Stannis said I could marry anyone, that I should think about alliances, about duty, about what makes you happy, Ned interrupted. For once in your life, Jon, think about what you want, not what duty demands, not what politics requires, what you actually want. Jon didn't know how to answer that, didn't know if he could. She's 12 now, Ned continued quietly. Still too young, but in a few years, when she's grown, when she understands who she is and what she wants, maybe then you can have this conversation again if you both still want it. You're Prince of Dragonstone now. You bow to the king and to your own conscience, no one else. Ned's smile was sad. I raised you to be honorable, but honor doesn't mean sacrificing your happiness for appearance. Sometimes the honorable thing is to choose love over duty. Remember that. 2 months later, Jon stood at the docks of White Harbor preparing to sail for Dragonstone. The ship was loaded. His household, small but efficient, was aboard. Ghost paced the deck, uncomfortable with the idea of water but unwilling to leave Jon's side. Only one thing remained. You're really leaving. Myrcella stood on the dock, wrapped in furs against the northern cold. She was taller now, no longer the small child who'd given him her favor. Growing into something between girl and woman, awkward and gangly, but beautiful in a way that made Jon's chest ache. I have to. Stannis commands it. I know. Duty. She said the word like a curse. You're always going where duty calls. Saving people. Being noble. Being stupid. Myrcella, you gave up everything for me. Your freedom. Your choices. You're Prince of Dragonstone, but you can't marry anyone because you're still protecting me. Still keeping your promise. I wanted to keep my promise. Did you? Or did you just not know how to break it? She stepped closer, her green eyes fierce. I'm 12. I understand things now. I know you could have left me at Winterfell and never looked back. I know you didn't have to visit every month, didn't have to send letters, didn't have to care. I couldn't help caring. Why? Her voice broke. Why do you care about a Lannister bastard? About the daughter of the woman who tried to have you killed? About a girl who ruined your life? You didn't ruin my life. You saved it. Jon knelt so they were eye to eye. That night in King's Landing, when everything was falling apart, you gave me something to protect, something to fight for. Without that, I would have just been another player in the game. But you made me something better, something worth being. Myrcella's eyes filled with tears. And now you're leaving. For now. But Dragonstone isn't the wall. It's not the end of the world. You can visit. I can visit. And when you're older, when you know who you are and what you want, we can talk about what comes next. What if I already know? She pulled something from her cloak. A ribbon, pale blue silk, embroidered with golden lions. The same favor she'd given him before the duel with Joffrey. I've kept this, all this time, waiting. But it still smelled like her. Winter roses and honey. Keep waiting, he said softly. A few more years. Grow up. See the world. Figure out who Myrcella Waters wants to be, and if, when you're a woman grown, you still want me, I'll be at Dragonstone, waiting. You promise? I promise. On my honor as a Stark, as a prince, as whatever I am now. Jon tied the ribbon around his wrist. This is yours. I'm just holding it until you're ready to take it back. Myrcella kissed his cheek. Quick, fierce, more than childish affection, but less than a woman's claim. Don't forget me while you're being important and princely. You're unforgettable. She ran then, before the tears could fall, disappearing into the crowd on the dock. Jon stood, watching her go, feeling the ribbon against his skin. Robb appeared beside him. You really care for her. I do. And in a few years, we'll see, if she still wants it, if I haven't completely ruined everything by then. Robb laughed. You're Jon Stark, Prince of Dragonstone, Lord of the ancient Targaryen seat. You defeated princes and saved kings. I think you can handle waiting for a girl to grow up. The prince thing still doesn't feel real. It's real, and you've earned it. Every bit of it. Robb clapped his shoulder. Now go be princely. Command your garrison. Defend the realm. Do all the things northern bastards aren't supposed to do. I'm not a bastard anymore. No, you're a Stark. And you always were. The law just finally caught up with the truth. Jon sailed for Dragonstone that afternoon. The ancient fortress rose from the sea like a dragon made of stone, its towers carved into the shapes of worms, its walls black as midnight, the Targaryen seat for 300 years, and now his. He stood on the deck as they approached, Ghost beside him, Myrcella's ribbon around his wrist. Behind him, the north, Winterfell, family, everything he'd known. Ahead, Dragonstone, duty, command. A future he'd never imagined. And somewhere between the two, a girl growing into a woman, waiting to see if the bastard-turned prince still wanted her when she was ready to want him back. Jon touched the ribbon and smiled. He'd been a bastard, then a Stark, then betrothed, then a lord, then a prince. But beneath all the titles, all the names, all the expectations, he was still just Jon. And Jon kept his promises. Welcome to Dragonstone, Your Grace, the Castellan said as they docked. Your Grace, Prince, Lord. Jon was all these things now, but he was also the boy who'd loved a princess who wasn't a princess, who'd saved her when wisdom demanded otherwise, who'd promised to wait for her to grow up and decide her own future. Thank you, Jon said. Let's get to work. The realm won't defend itself. He walked into his castle, into his duty, into his future, and he carried a favor from a girl who'd given it to him when she was 10 and he was nobody. 5 years from now, when she was 17 and he was 21, they'd have that conversation again. Until then, he had a realm to protect and a promise to keep. The rest would come in its own time. Epilogue. 5 years later, Myrcella Waters arrived at Dragonstone on a ship from White Harbor. She was 17 now, beautiful, confident, no longer the broken child who'd lost everything, but a woman who'd built herself from the ashes of the Lannister name. Jon met her at the dock, older now, scarred from battles with pirates and Free City's raiders, but still himself. You came, he said. You waited, she replied. She held out her hand. On her wrist, a ribbon, pale blue silk, embroidered with white wolves. A favor made in the north, a claim made by a woman, not a child. I know who I am now, Myrcella said. And I know what I want. If the offer still stands. Jon took the ribbon, tied it beside the faded one he'd worn for 5 years. It stands. It always stood. It'll stand until the end of my days. Then ask me properly, like a prince should. Jon knelt on the dock, before the assembled garrison, before the watching world. Myrcella Waters, will you marry me? Will you be my princess, my wife, my partner, and whatever comes next? Yes. Yes to all of it. Yes forever. He stood, she kissed him. The garrison cheered. And somewhere in the north, Ned Stark smiled. The bastard of Winterfell had become the Prince of Dragonstone, and the princess who wasn't a princess had found her prince who shouldn't have been. Sometimes the stories the singers told actually came true. Sometimes the Game of Thrones had winners. And sometimes, against all odds, love survived politics, betrayal, and the cruelty of the world. Jon and Myrcella married that spring, and they lived, if not happily ever after, then at least honestly, loyally, and together, which was more than most people in Westeros ever got. Let us know what you'd like to see next. The end.